Hello, good evening, everybody, and good day to you as well. Those of you who are watching in the daytime, I hope everyone is great. And welcome to the Ask Abhijit Show, episode 305. Today, we discuss the most dangerous thing we can discuss on this channel, which is geopolitics. And I'm going to take questions from the super chat and the live chat. Before we do that, let's see who all we have on the live stream. I can see Nagendra Adiga, Saurabh, RPPL. It's 9:30 a.m. in Washington, where RPPL is. Well, good to have you, sir. Chat DSP. Good to see you, Chat DSP. Ujwal Datta. Alvin Rodriguez says maths and science is beautiful. It is. No question about that. Daksh says Ram Ram. Avinash. Kumar Kanishka Kaushik. Good day, good evening. Nabanita Das. Good to see you as well. Mr. Jam. Kedar Parab. You. Shiv Kapoor. Chat DSP again. Jay Desai. Ken, what do I think about Trump and Bill Clinton? What can I say? Silent viewer, hello. Abhishek Shukla is here from Kanpur. Good to have you, sir. Nabanita Das, Shubh Nationalist. Somi Jain is here from Jaipur. Geopolitical Dubai, good evening from Indore. Hitanshu Mehta is here from Gujarat. Somi Jain, Abhishek Shukla. Bharatiya Patriotic, Sagar Thorat, Namaskaram. Bruce Wayne, good to have you. Shubh Nationalist, Mystic SK, Biju Sai, Critical Thinker, Ashwani, good evening. Pranav Sharma is here from Jammu. Ashish Tripathi from Gorakhpur, hello. Mr. Saxena is here from Dublin in Ireland. Shishir Upadhyaya, you. Amisha Mishra is also here, good evening, ma'am. Super Pappy 111, Om Naik from Chhattisgarh. Saurabh is here from Canada. McLovin is here. Super Pap 1111. Ashwani, Saurabh Mahajan, Rudraksh Kaul, 108 Shivoham from Canada. Harley Didison. Okay. Ashish Tripathi. Shreyas Mitra is here from Moscow. Good evening, I suppose, in Moscow. Ambika Reddy 52. Good to have you, ma'am. McLovin once again. Freedom from Outcome is here from Canada. Lion Leo is here from China. Well, ni hao. Miss Trupti, namaste. Kiran Krishna Kapar, hello. Satellite. Ashwani, Arka Prava Banerjee. Anonymous Scientist, bonsoir. Good, doing great. Satellite has become a new member. Thank you so much. And let us all welcome Satellite to the membership of the channel. Thank you very much. Indeed. Maulik Patel is here from Gujarat. Maulik Patel. Well, okay. And everyone else. Okay, I will not be able to greet all of you individually. Bai is here. Ansley Franco is also here. Sunil Kumar is here from Hunasigi, Karnataka. Anandu MS. Kiran Krishna Kumar from Kerala. Big Beautiful Bill. Okay, Somi Jain. All right. Okay, let's take some questions, shall we? Let's take some questions. I'll take as many as possible over the next couple of hours. So let's see. Prithvi says, why you and we subs can't start a deep state? Seriously. Okay. Let's say we all start a deep state. What will we seek to achieve with that? What is the actual deep state, right? You want to start a deep state because the Americans allegedly have a deep state. Well, let's understand the characteristics of the US deep state. Who are the members of the deep state? Do we know? No. They are hidden away. They are anonymous. That's number one. If we start a deep state, we will be known. Number two, the members of the alleged American deep state, they are the most powerful people in the world. They control heads of state, they control nations, they control entire economies, they control a significant portion of the world's economy. Will we be in a position to do that? So the point is, if you start something, you need to have clear, defined objectives. You can't just say, okay, let's start a Chai Pe Charcha group and name it Deep State, and we feel good about that. It doesn't work like that, right? So if you want to start something like that, you have to first of all place yourself in a position where you are super powerful and super wealthy. And then you have to find like-minded people who are similar to you, super powerful, super wealthy, and then you start a deep state quietly without any fanfare. That's how you start a deep state. Okay? You have to first of all be extremely wealthy and extremely powerful. I'm talking about hundreds of billions of dollars wealthy. I'm not sure I have that much money as of now. Right, so that's the deal. Okay, Minimalist Maverick says, why the US wants to destroy India? Why can't we all, India, US, Deutschland, France, Great Britain, why can't we all be friends against China, Russia, KP? Okay, KP. Will left and right wing political parties balkanize the US? My question is, why do we have to stand against Russia? Why should India be an enemy of Russia? Why does India need to be friends with Great Britain, the United States, against Russia? Forget about China. China, we understand China has placed us in a position where we have to be wary of them. But why Russia? What has Russia done to us? Russia, I don't see them having done anything significant that hurts us or has hurt us in the past. What about the UK? Has the UK behaved in a way that we can trust them as friends? The UK destroyed our civilization. They destroyed our economy. And you want to be friends with them? Sir, is everything all right with you? Why on earth would want to be friends with this genocidal, barbaric, monstrous nation called the UK and its successor state, the United States, which has funded and financed Pakistani terrorism against us for decades? Why would I want to be friends with them? I don't want to be their enemy, but why should we seek to be their friends? Can we trust them? The first principle of friendship is that you have to be able to trust each other. Do you understand what I'm trying to say here? Do you see where I'm going? Doesn't work that way. Why would we want to alienate Russia and make Russia our enemy? Why? I don't get it. Okay, next. Subramaniam Vishwanathan is a new member. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. And let us all welcome Subramaniam Vishwanathan ji. Thank you so much. Bhaskar Kayatwal says, it was a great pleasure meeting you in JD. Well, likewise, it was great to meet you. Could you please outline how the alleged drug trade in South America is funded, abetted by America themselves, and what purpose does it serve? Look, we don't have any evidence, but we have, well, circumstantial evidence, let's say, which is not direct evidence. So you can't prove a thing, right? But let's look at it this way. From the 1980s onwards, when I was a little kid, I've been hearing about the American war on drugs. Ronald Reagan, he goes on live television with his first lady, with his wife, Nancy Reagan, and they talk about drugs, how bad drugs are. Don't do drugs. Drugs are evil. The US will launch a war on drugs. Operation Condor, if anyone even remembers what that was, Operation Condor, and so much more. So they allegedly fought this war on drugs, the United States, right? And the drugs were apparently coming from certain parts of the world, such as the various cartels in Central and South America, the Mexican cartels, the Colombian cartels, the Sinaloa cartel, the Cali cartel, the Medellin cartel, and so on and so forth. And there were very major players who used to, funnel drugs into the United States. They had trade routes. You had people like Carlos Leder, who was the pilot. Yeah, and there was a whole story about him that I read as a teenager. And then there was obviously people like Pablo Escobar, Si Senor, Plata o Plomo, that guy. And of course, there's the Golden Triangle right next door to us, which is now intruding into India's own territory, and so on. So you have the cartels in South America, Central America, who produce a tremendous amount of product, let's call it, white powder of various kinds. Ugh. And where does it end up? It ends up in the United States. Apparently, the US has the best law enforcement mechanisms in the world, the best, immigration control, all of that. And yet, all of this product ends up in the United States, on the streets of the US. And if you are a US citizen, you will have done drugs at some point in your life. If you are a kid in the US, 12 years old, 15 years old, whatever, you have access to drugs on every street corner. So if the US is so anti-drugs, then why are drugs so readily available? Just like you can buy candy, you can buy drugs in the US. Everybody has access to drugs, right? Everyone knows the local dealers. Isn't this incredibly strange? Doesn't this point to incredible corruption in the United States? Is it possible to have drugs supplied to each street corner all across this gigantic nation without the complicity of various agencies, politicians, cops? Is it possible? Is it even possible? Right? It's not. So it looks like there's some kind of understanding. It looks like that. I may be completely wrong, of course, because we don't have any evidence. It looks like, though, there is somebody who's producing a product. There's somebody who is the consumer, and there is clear distribution. So there we have it. Now, let's say if this is allegedly true, hypothetically, that the Americans are, allowing the cartels to supply drugs into their country. Why would they do that? The cartels, they become super powerful as a consequence, right? Super powerful, super wealthy. They have access to the latest weaponry and whatnot. They are like armies unto themselves. They are like governments unto themselves. What is the point of doing this? Well, one of the ways this makes sense potentially is that you use the cartels to control the governments. If the government gets out of hand and they start enacting policies that are against the interest of the United States, maybe you can use the cartels to counterbalance the governments. The cartels are very nasty organizations, very violent. When there's an election, let's say in Mexico, you'll find every election cycle, several dozen politicians are taken out. Bang, bang. Right? Isn't this a way of keeping each country under control? Right? So think about it in these ways. I'm not saying it's true. We have no actual evidence, but makes sense logically this way. You need leverage. Here's leverage. You keep these cartels super powerful, super wealthy, supply to the latest arms, ammunition. You want them in your pockets. You allow them to do certain things, and that way they get the money, and that way they work for you in their respective countries. Well, there we have it. That's all hypothetical, of course. There's no evidence to support what I'm saying, but the cartels do exist, and we know where the product goes. So there is some, let's say, circumstantial evidence, but no direct evidence. Bhaskar Kayatwal says, if in the long term Pakistan is starved of water due to the Indus Waters Treaty abeyance inaction, hypothetically, if some of their mass population just starts walking towards Rajasthan, Punjab, how does a nation handle such a situation? You put your armed forces on the border. You have fencing, which already exists. You have armed forces. You have tanks. Those Pakistani zombies who will walk towards your border, they can be stopped dead. That's how you that's how you hypothetically handle the situation. There are laws in our country. If you are a foreign national, if you want to enter our nation, you have to come through the proper channels. You have to apply for a visa. You have to wait for us to process your application, and depending on how we you see the merits and demerits of your case, we may issue a visa or not. And if you bypass that process and you try to enter the country illegally, right, you're committing the gravest of crimes, and we will take you out. Because if you're coming in from Pakistan illegally, you are most likely going to be a terrorist. So it is completely legal for us, for our government and our armed forces, to take you out if you're a Pakistani trying to cross into our territory illegally. So that's what we do. Easy peasy. Even if 1 million of them come, we can deal with them. No problem at all, right? We have satellites that can monitor what's happening. We have various other means of monitoring exactly what's happening on the western side of the border, right? Or the line of control. So no issue. Easy to deal with. Critical Thinker says, a few hours after a blast, Islamabad blast happened. Looks like engineered blast from Pakistan government to play victim card again so India doesn't retaliate. Is this the new normal now? Is this an intelligence failure from the government? Okay, let's take the second part of the question first. Is this an intelligence failure from the government? If you go fishing, if you are fond of fishing, you'll go to the river or the lake or the sea or whatever. You'll put out your fishing line and you'll wait for the fish to catch your bait. Now, tell me something. Is it possible to catch every fish? It's not. Even if you are not using, the rope and bait, if you're using a net, even then you can't catch all the fish. The only way to catch all the fish in a pond is to dynamite the pond. or to electrocute the pond, which is extremely barbaric, right? No one wants to do that. So the point is, it's not possible to catch all the fish. When you have a nation like ours with 1.4 billion people, and you have 100 million potentially Bangladeshis in the country, God knows how many Rohingyas, God knows how many what else we have, and also God knows how many Pakistanis we have, hidden among our people. It's gonna be a huge problem for us. And the fact is that the government agencies have uncovered this plot. They have been able to capture, confiscate several thousand kilos apparently of high grade explosives, ammonium nitrate and whatnot, and also several, I don't know, sufficient ricin, which was enough to kill hundreds of thousands of people. So the government agencies are doing a great job. And apparently this bomb blast that happened in Delhi near the Red Fort, it was not supposed to happen. They were transporting, they were in the process of getting caught, they were trying to escape, and they were transporting apparently the explosive material from one place to another, and it blew up on the way apparently. Because when somebody blows up a car bomb, let's say, in a crowded area, you always will find certain characteristics of that blast. The number one characteristic is that blast, that explosive, is going to have a lot of nuts and bolts and nails surrounding it, so that when the explosion happens, those nuts, bolts, and nails, they fly out like bullets and cause tremendous damage far from the actual place where the explosion happens. This device that exploded had none of those characteristics, which means that it was not a ready device. It exploded inadvertently. That's what I understand thus far of what's happened. So this happened, and obviously this is part of a big ring of terrorists, all doctors apparently. Some of them connected to some terrorists in Kashmir apparently and whatnot. I think the whole thing is still under investigation. So the blast happened in Delhi, and it happened because the government agencies, intelligence agencies were zeroing in on all the terrorists. That's why it happened. So I think it's not an intelligence failure. It's actually, it was a successful operation that was going on. But obviously, it's not that difficult to set off an explosive device in some part of India. It's not that difficult at all. Any idiot with an 80 IQ can do it. So that's the problem. That's the problem this country faces. Now, after a few hours after the blast, there was a blast in Islamabad. Is this engineered by Pakistan to claim victimhood? Possibly. It's very possible that the Pakistanis set off a blast somewhere in Islamabad just to make it look like they are also victims of terrorism and that sort of thing. And they're okay with a few of their people dying. They don't care. Zombies, right? So India doesn't retaliate. Is this the new normal? It potentially is the new normal, right? So India has this new doctrine or policy or whatever you want to call it, that any act of terror is an act of war. But then the question is, what's the threshold for war? If 3 people die in an act of terrorism in India, is that the threshold for war? Or if 7 people die, is that the threshold? If 20 people die, is that the threshold? What is the threshold? And that is the problem for the government of India. You can make a statement that this is the new normal and this is our new policy. An act of terror is an act of war. But then the question is, it's easier said than done, right? You don't want to start a war when it is not in your, let's say, potentially not a good time to go to war. Let's say hypothetically now is not a good time to go to war, and the Pakistanis want to prod us into going to war. Then should we take the bait and go and allow the Pakistanis to dictate what happens? That's the problem. So I think the government will need to be very clear about what exactly is the threshold for going to war. Terrorism, sure, but what kind of terrorism? What magnitude of terrorism? If there's a terror attack in which X number of people die, what is the X which will be the threshold that has to be crossed for us to go to war, that the government will have to decide? And obviously it will come under pressure if this sort of thing continues to happen. 6P70 Delta says countries like Iran, Japan and South Korea operate more submarines than India, while only the US and China have more aircraft carriers than India. Are we throwing money on the wrong things? Look, there apparently is some kind of new naval plan in which we're going to be constructing a lot of warships, apparently. But the point is that the deadliest warships of the 21st century are submarines, right? Aircraft carriers are more for prestige and more for bullying weaker nations. Like I've explained in a recent episode, I've gone into detail into why aircraft carriers are not the dominant, naval ship anymore. Submarines are the deadliest naval ships. Aircraft carriers are good for projecting power, bullying weak nations, controlling trade routes and all, but they cannot operate successfully in contested environments. They'll be taken out. It will be a disaster for the morale of your armed forces. So it makes sense for a nation like India to invest in submarines. Now, how many submarines do we have right now? Maybe 15, maybe 16, 17. I'm sure it's less than 20. A nation of India's size, a nation that likes to trumpet Vishwaguru with superpower every other day, we don't even have 20 submarines. It's a joke, right? I mean, North Korea has 60, 50, 60 submarines. Pakistan is going to get a bunch of submarines from the Chinese. Pakistan may soon have a better submarine capability than us, potentially. I mean, probably not, but why should they be even like 2/3 equal to us? Why? What are we doing? And yeah, okay, we have a couple of aircraft carriers, good for us. We should not invest money on more of these things. 2 is enough for now, for the next 20, 30 years. We should invest money on submarines. So I am a big proponent of having more submarines. I would say we should have 50 submarines. And we should invest money on platforms that can deliver a huge punch for the least amount of money. And that platforms that will give us distributed lethality as opposed to concentrated lethality, which is the case of aircraft carriers. So we should invest in platforms that make it very difficult for enemies to operate close to our maritime regions, close to our coastlines. So one of the great things we can invest in is missile boats. A missile boat will cost $20 million, but you can put 3 BrahMos missiles on that. And if you have 100 of those, we can distribute them all around our coastline, which will make us a formidable naval power, at least defensively. We start with defense, obviously, first, right? So these are the kind of things we should be doing. And obviously, we should have submarines. We should have more submarines. So I don't know what the plans are. We have some plans for submarines, a few more nuclear submarines in the next 10 years and all. Numbers, quantity has a quality of its own, as Shri Joseph Stalin once said very famously. I don't know, whatever. That's the situation right now. 6P70 Delta says a French ambassador to Russia during the 1990s claimed that during that time, Americans used to give him instructions on what to speak, on which occasion to speak up, etc. What's my opinion? Okay, I am not aware of this. If a French ambassador has made such a claim, then it is very likely to be true, because the Americans, at least in the 1990s, had this unipolar moment, right? Their great enemy, the USSR, had crumbled and disintegrated. What was left behind was a rump state called Russia, an extremely diffident state, zero confidence, destroyed economy. The Americans were infiltrating Russia. The entire Russian economy was being deconstructed and demolished by the so-called oligarchs, whose job was to destroy the economy, right? And Yeltsin was this drunk president whose greatest joy was alcohol, vodka, yes. And yeah, so that in the 90s, the Americans were at the peak of their power. They were the only superpower. They still are, actually, but at that time it was complete unipolarity. And no one would want to stand up to them at the time. And that's why they would have this, the sense of hubris, this sense of overconfidence. And maybe they may have made such, done such things like giving instructions to the French ambassador about what to say in Russia and whatnot. It's possible. It's possible. But I'm not aware of this, but personally. Anonymous scientist says, bonsoir. Will this Delhi incident carried out by white-collar terrorists be considered an act of war? The Naugam incident it also looks suspicious. So Naugam is this police station explosion, right? There was an explosion in a police station which destroyed a lot of evidence. Very convenient, isn't it? And the Delhi incident in which you had a car bomb, which claimed, I don't know, 12, 13, 15, I don't know what number it is. I hope it stays as low as possible, but it killed a certain number of people. So clearly carried out by doctors, white collar terrorists. The question is, were they connected to Pakistan? They were all Indian citizens, right? So if we go to war with Pakistan when Indian citizens have done this, even if they may be connected to Pakistan, but the world will point fingers at us and say that you are now unfairly, unjustly targeting Pakistan when your own citizens are carrying out terrorism, right? So that's the conundrum which is associated with terrorism. That's the problem. The Pakistanis can even have terrorists coming through Nepal or from Bangladesh or from Kuki land, the northern part of Burma that is currently lawless, where the Americans want to construct Kuki land. They can have terrorists coming from there. There are so many ways of attacking this country. And then if that happens, and if there is no direct connection to Pakistan, we will be in a position where if you want to attack Pakistan, we have to first justify that by putting out dossiers, by collecting evidence and giving it to the United Nations and so on. By the time the Pakistanis are prepared, something is coming. So you lose the element of surprise. So the point once again is, if there is an act of terrorism in the country, whether it is directly connected with evidence to Pakistan or not, what is the threshold that we're going to decide that constitutes an act of war? If 2 lives are lost, is that going to be considered an act of war? Or is it going to be 5 lives or 10 lives or 20 lives, or what's the number? There's going to have to be some kind of threshold, a red line, below which we don't go to war with Pakistan. If that threshold is crossed, we go to war. That is something the government will have to decide. I'm sure it's going to depend on the number of lives that are sadly lost or something like that. At this point in time, I don't see this act of terror. I don't see it being considered an act of war right now. The tensions are high right now between India and Pakistan. And war could break out anytime if there is another terror attack on India, potentially. And it's also true that the longer India waits to deal with Pakistan, the stronger they will get. Because they're going to be supplied arms, ammunition, weapons, whatnot by the United States and their proxies. That's going to happen. So the longer we wait, the stronger they will get. Biju Sai says Napoleon once predicted that the Louisiana Purchase will lead to the US becoming highly strong and will humble the pride of England. Looks like Napoleon was right. The Louisiana Purchase happened in which year? 1803, was it? Let's fact check that. Just to fact check, it doesn't really matter which year it was. It was in the early 19th century. Louisiana Purchase. Which year was this? 1803, was it? 1803. Which year was it? 1803. Yes, my memory for once was right with dates. Okay. So the Louisiana Purchase happened in 1803, in which the United States purchased this big piece of territory from the French, from Napoleon, and that essentially roughly doubled the size of the United States, right? And that's something I've spoken about in the past. I'm not sure whether Napoleon predicted this or not. I'm not sure what he said or what he did not say. But if he did say what you've written here, then obviously what he said has turned out to be true. The US obviously is the most powerful nation in the world, and England or the United Kingdom, it was relegated to second-class power status in 1956 after the Suez Crisis, after it was humiliated in the Suez Crisis, and that's a whole different story. I've spoken about that at length in the past. So after 1956, the UK was no longer a first-rate world power; it became a second-rate world power, and today the UK is a third-rate world power. It's a vassal of the US. It's not even a sovereign nation. It doesn't even have control of its own nuclear deterrent. So we know how things have gone. And if Napoleon did say this, then he turned out to be absolutely correct. Biju Sai says, do you think India should join groups like the G7? Also, will the US ever try to do with us what they did to their G7 partner, Japan, by Plaza Accords? Look, groups like the G7, they are invite-only groups. Look, tomorrow morning, if Bangladesh decides I'll become a member of the G7, will they be allowed to be a member of the G7? No. If tomorrow morning, let's say Poland decides I want to become a member of the G7, will they be given entry in the G7? No. The G7 is this group of industrialized nations. Even China is not a member of the G7, as far as I know. Right? China, it's all these white European nations and the United States and Canada, I suppose, and Australia, perhaps. Let's take a quick look at which are the G7 nations. Yeah, let's take a look at that. Which are the G7 nations? Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the UK, and the United States. Not even Australia. So it's these nations, and this group. It's not open for anybody who wants to become a member, right? It's not. It doesn't work like that. And the question is, why should India want to join a group like the G7? What do we get out of it? Status. We should stop playing these status games and concentrate on wealth and power. Forget about status. India is a very performative society. We chase status at the expense of wealth and power. As a nation, India should only focus on wealth and power. Forget about status. What's the point of joining a group like the G7? What's the benefit? And even if we want to join, will they allow us to join? They may invite us every year for the summit because we are the fourth largest economy, soon to be the third largest economy. We can't be ignored. That's why they're inviting us, because the global economy doesn't function without us. That's the only reason. But they don't like us. If we say knock knock, let me join the group, they'll say take a hike. They'll laugh you out of the room, right? Why do you want humiliation? It's the same thing as wanting to be a permanent member of the UN Security Council. They're not going to allow you to become a member. Whoever are the members right now, right? So the point is, forget about membership. Become so powerful that you simply can't be ignored. The UN Security Council permanent seat, it's all about the veto power, right? Become so powerful that you have a veto whether you sit on that seat or not. That is the point. Forget about these status games. That's my entire point to my viewers and to the people of India. Okay, do you think the US will do to us what they did with their G7 partner Japan by Plaza Accord? Japan is not their partner. Japan is their slave. Japan is their colony. Japan is a vassal state of the US. Japan is under permanent US military occupation since 1945. People don't understand this. People don't realize this. Japan is not a free nation. Japan is not a sovereign nation. Japan is an occupied country. And as an occupied country, you have no choice but to do what the master says, right? They have 50,000 troops on your soil. They have 130 military bases on your soil. What will you do? Will you go against them? What happens if you go against them? Remember Shinzo Abe. But India is not in that position, right? So they can't do that to India. They can't force our RBI, Reserve Bank of India, to enact or implement policies similar to what the Bank of Japan was forced to do as part of the Plaza Accords. Right? That won't be possible. So they'll try to do it in other ways by imposing tariffs and whatever else they're doing. So they'll try to slow down India's economic growth and maybe harm the country, damage the country in a variety of ways through other means, not the Plaza Accord kind of thing. Okay. Minimalist Maverick says, I really want India to have 700 plus offshore bases, plus trade routes control, plus reserve currency. How do we achieve this and replace the US as a true superpower in 50 years? You do that by becoming the overwhelmingly most powerful nation in the world. And what do I mean by overwhelmingly most powerful nation? Do I mean economic power? No. I mean the power to destroy everybody else. That's the only way you can do everything else. How does the US control more than 700 or 800 extraterritorial bases? How do all those countries allow the US to do it? They allow the US to have bases in their countries, on their soil, because the US can destroy them if they don't allow it. That's how powerful the US is. The US can destroy any nation, dismantle, destroy. That's how powerful the US is. So you don't want that to happen. You don't want to face the wrath of Uncle Sam. So you do what they say. And that's why they have this. Why is the US dollar the reserve currency of the world? What enforces the status of the US dollar as the reserve currency? The military might of the US enforces that. So if India wants to be a superpower, Indians love the status, right, of being superpower and Vishwaguru. If India wants to be a superpower, we have to become the most powerful military nation in the world. Even if we are not the most powerful economy, if we have a bigger stick than the US, then we are the most powerful nation. We are a superpower, and then we can have 700 plus 1,000 extraterritorial bases across the world. Maybe we'll have bases on the moon, on Mars also. See, in today's world, we have to not only be the most powerful nation from a military perspective, but also from a technological perspective. You may have 20 million soldiers, but if they have 100,000 robots, your 20 million soldiers will be raw meat, right? Technologically, we have to be advanced. So, what is the road to superpower status? Technological superiority and military superiority. And these two go hand in hand. And for that, you don't necessarily need economic superiority. Not necessarily. If you sacrifice all the Ladli Behna Yojanas and all that nonsense and pour all that money into technological and military development, then you can become a very, very scary nation in like 10, 20 years. Right? So that's how you can do it. But if you have this democratic process and all these yojanas and whatnot, then nothing will ever happen. Biju Sai says, even after getting one after one crackheads like Nehru, Morarji Desai, etc., how did India manage to remain fully sovereign? Well, let me ask you a question, my dear friends. Between 2004 and 2014, that 10-year period, was India fully sovereign, truly sovereign? Ask yourselves this question. Was India genuinely truly sovereign? There have been periods of time when India was not genuinely fully sovereign. India is truly sovereign today. So when I construct my rankings, hard power rankings, I take in factors. I consider factors like sovereignty and GDP and military spending, expenditure, power projection capabilities, number of nuclear warheads, and so many other things, right? So when I consider sovereignty, whether a nation is fully sovereign or not, what are the factors in sovereignty? There's territorial sovereignty, there is legislative sovereignty, there is economic sovereignty, there's military sovereignty. Those are the four factors I consider in sovereignty. But there's a fifth factor I don't consider because it's hard to quantify it, and that is technological sovereignty. Is India technologically sovereign? It's not. So there are big issues, right? But we are more or less territorially sovereign, economically definitely sovereign, legislatively sovereign. And what else was there? There's one more, whatever that is, which I just said. What are the sovereignty factors? Economic sovereignty, military sovereignty. Yeah, fourth is military. So those four forms of sovereignty, we are fully sovereign in that. But technologically, we are not a sovereign nation. Remember that. So we have issues. Let's not be all like, everything is hunky and dory and everything is fantastic. We've had issues. We have had periods of time in the periods of history in the past, between 47 and today, and between 47 and 2014, that we were not fully sovereign at times. Okay. So there have been major issues. Kunal Krish says, are we waiting for the trade deal with the US or something else, Pakistan? I think we're just going forward with whatever our plans are as a nation. If the trade deal happens with the US, good. If it doesn't happen, fine. No problem. Right? The US has unfortunately decided to adopt a maximalist stance, a maximalist position in the trade talks. What do we mean by that? You give us everything or you give us nothing. That sort of thing. We want everything. You open your entire economy to us. That's the only demand we have. We will not accept anything less than that. You have to open up your entire economy. You have to open up your agricultural sector. And whatever goods we export into your country, you have to impose 0% tariffs. That's called a maximalist position. And obviously that doesn't work for us. Right? So that's why the trade talks haven't yielded a trade agreement thus far. So are we waiting for it? No, we are going ahead with whatever we are doing. If it happens, great. If it doesn't happen, fine, we'll deal with it. Pakistan, I don't know. Pakistan, the sooner we deal with Pakistan, the better it will be. And what do I mean by deal with Pakistan? Do we again go and do another Operation Sindur and hit another 10 military air bases and kill another 300 terrorists and we're done, happy? We slapped them again, we punched them. What's the point? What's the objective of a war with Pakistan? We want an end to terrorism. We want an end to the nuclear blackmail, which means complete regime change and balkanization of Pakistan. If we can't achieve that, there's no point going to war. So, yeah, that's what needs to happen. How long will we have this blackmail at our western border? How long would we keep tolerating that? And does Pakistan exist only so that every few months or years we'll go and give them a few slaps and we come back and we say, yeah, we won 3-0, 7-0, whatever? What's the point of doing that? A war should have a definite objective. And the objective when it comes to Pakistan has to be balkanization and regime change and the end of nuclear and denuclearization and an end to terrorism. That has to be the objective of a war with Pakistan. Nothing less than that will consider victory. I don't want the POK, like a few hundred square kilometers of land, to come back to India, which will come with its own problems. I would rather have a proper balkanization of Pakistan, end to terrorism, then we'll deal with POK. Satellite has become a new member. Thank you very much, sir, and welcome. Thank you. Mr. Saxena says, please shed some light on how the US used Nazi designs and scientists to get a head start in almost every technological industry and monopolize innovation. So I won't be able to shed all the light because there's a lot that's still under wraps, but I can give you the example of the US space program, which did not exist until after 1945, until after the Nazi surrender in the Second World War. So when the Nazis surrendered in 1945 to the Russians and to some extent the US, at that time, the United States did not have a space program. So what the US did is that it captured a large number of German rocket engineers, including the greatest of them all, Werner von Braun. And these engineers were captured, taken prisoner, and shipped to the United States in an operation called Operation Paperclip, I think. And the Russians also captured as many of these rocket engineers and aviation engineers as possible and brought them to Russia. And the Americans also got their hands on some of the German missiles. So Nazi Germany was the pioneer of not only ballistic missiles, but also cruise missiles, and also of the jet engine. So all of this technology made its way into the US and in Russia. But the Americans somehow were very smart and they got the best engineers. And that's how they started their space program. The first ever photograph of the Earth from space was taken from a captured V-2 missile, which was test flown out of the United States. And then you had the setup of NASA, and Werner von Braun eventually became a naturalized US citizen. He became the head of NASA, and he was the brain behind the Saturn V rocket, which took American astronauts to the moon, right? And there was this Horten Brothers flying wing aircraft. Let's take a look at that, right? Which was a Nazi German aircraft. Horten Brothers flying wing. Take a look at what this looked like. This is what this German design looked like. Okay? What does it look like? Yeah, it doesn't it look like the American stealth aircraft that came later? US stealth. So it looks, you can clearly see that the American B-2 Spirit is inspired. It's not just inspired, it is based on this 1942 German design. So that's just a couple of examples. There's so many more examples like this. And that's how the Americans got a head start. So today, when they complain about China stealing their technology and whatnot, that technology was taken from Germany, much of that, and built upon. So the Americans acquired the technology, they acquired the engineers, and then they built upon that, and that's how they iteratively improved upon things. And today we see where they are. That's how it happened. Teen Talks Dharma says there are many ways to run a country like socialism, communism, capitalism. Is there a rule to pick one? Aren't India a mixture of all? Is India a mixture of socialism, communism, and capitalism today? See, capitalism is a way of running your economy. Socialism, once again, it's more about economy. And also, so when you talk about how to run a country, we're talking about the system of governance. We're also talking about the economic system that the country will adopt. Now, the economic system doesn't necessarily have to be the same as the governance. For example, let's take the example of China. Okay, China today is nominally a communist nation. Okay, it's a communist dictatorship, but today people kind of have the right to property. You even have millionaires in China, and the economic system is it's capitalistic in nature, right? State controlled capitalism. So it's kind of a weird mixture of socialism and capitalism. It's the Chinese way of doing things. They have learned over time what works best for their country. So each country has to figure out what works best for it. Is India a mixture of socialism, communism, capitalism? I don't think India is a mixture of socialism, communism, and capitalism. India, from 1947 onwards, was a socialist country. State-controlled economy and very poorly performing public sector and tremendous whatever else problems. And today we have moved more towards an open market system, and there still is some state control. We still have public sector units. We still have the government involved in manufacturing, industry, and business and whatnot, which ideally should not be, but it is. So it's kind of somewhere between socialism and capitalism. Today, more capitalism than socialism, but a lot of government control through the bureaucracy and whatnot. So it's not the best system today. It's pretty difficult. It's pretty hard to do business, but way better than 1991, right? So we've come a long way. We are way better today, but still there's a lot to improve for us. Is there a rule to pick what works best for your country? The rule is very simple. What is your long-term objective for your country? Let's say you want to be a superpower by, let's say, what today's 2025, well, let's say 50 years, 2075. So in 50 years, we want to be a superpower, economic superpower, and military superpower. And to be a military superpower, you have to be an economic superpower. Let's say we assume that way. So if you want to be the largest economy in the world, how do you get there? You have to break it down into pieces, into smaller action items, let's say, or smaller milestones. So if you want to be, let's say, $100 trillion economy, okay, by 2075. So where do you want to be in 2050? Maybe you want to be a $50 trillion economy in 2050. Today's 2025. So where do you want to be in 2035 and so on? So you break it down to milestones and you decide which is the best way to go there, depending on the kind of country that you have and so on. So that's the rule, to pick what is best for you. That's how we do it. Sam Arora says, with the recent Delhi terrorist attack and multiple terrorist arrests, is Operation Sindu 2.0 likely? And how should India handle the US response this time? I don't think Operation Sindu 2.0 is likely right now. I don't think so. The terrorists who were captured were Indian citizens. Yeah. There may or may not be links to Pakistan. Probably there will be. But if you go to war with the country, you have to have clear justification. And even if we know that there is justification, the world has to be convinced. That's the way things work today. So I don't think there's going to be Operation Sindu 2.0 because of this terrorist attack right now, immediately. I may be completely wrong. It's possible, but it looks like it's unlikely right now. And whenever Operation Sindur 2.0 happens, how do you handle the US response? See, what you do is you start and conclude the operation as soon as possible. You don't wait for 7 weeks for the war to conclude. If you wait that long, the Americans would come and interfere in 3,000 ways. You finish the operation, which means you achieve your military objectives in 72 hours, 3 days, maybe 4 days, maybe 5 days, not longer than that. Otherwise, the world will get the time, will have the opportunity to formulate a response and try and squeeze you and create problems for you. It has to be a blitzkrieg operation. No dilly dallying, no rules of engagement. Just achieve the military outcomes that we want. That's it. Achieve it in whichever way you want. You have to give that carte blanche to the military. Do whatever it takes to achieve the objectives that we have given you. Get it done as soon as possible in the shortest amount of time. If we have that sort of clarity, the Americans won't have the time to come and try to impede the progress of the operation. Godliness says, who is backing Pakistan against Bharat? They all knew we will respond with Sindu 2.0 after the massive attack they were planning. It means Pakistan was ready and is ready for a conflict with India. Yes, there's this big. Is it a huge mystery as to who is backing Pakistan against Bharat? Is it such a huge mystery? Let's go back a few decades. December 25, 1979. What happens? The Soviets decide to invade Afghanistan. Who was the Soviet premier at the time? Was it Andropov? Was it somebody else? Whoever, doesn't matter. The Soviets decide to invade Afghanistan. The US sees an opportunity to bleed the USSR. So it shakes hands with the Pakistanis. Ziaul Haq says that a few $1 million will not work. It's peanuts. I will need lots of money. So the Americans give Pakistan lots of money and lots of weapons and military advisors and training personnel who train the Pakistanis into how to use terrorism tactics to bleed the USSR, the Soviet occupiers of Afghanistan. And after a decade, the Soviets are beaten and they leave humiliated from Afghanistan. And then all that surplus terrorist capability that Pakistan had built up, it is then moved into India. And even in the 1980s, when the Afghanistan conflict was going on, the Pakistanis were using terrorism in Punjab. All of that was funded and financed by the United States. And then in 1989 or wherever, there's a disaster in Kashmir. The Kashmiri Hindus are evicted from Kashmir. Many of them are murdered, mass murders and whatnot. All of that was funded and financed by the United States. So who do you think is backing Pakistan against Bharat? Do I really have to spell it out? Ansh says, what's the ideal geography for Bharat? Ignoring modern religious/political lines, should Bharat extend to the South China Sea, even to Iran or further? Look, India is super congested. The population density is super high. No question about that. So what do we do? Where do we find new land? Right? We have too many people in this country. 1.4 billion people. In 1947, undivided Bharat, we had 330 million, which included Pakistan and Bangladesh today's, right? The population density was like less than a quarter of what it is today. Imagine the competition for resources and all the stress that it brings. So India needs more space. Yeah, no question. What do we do? Do we invade Persia? No, we don't do that. Come on, that's bad. We should not invade Persia. We should not invade Burma. What do we do? Where do we find new land? I suppose we evict the Chinese from Tibet and then we kind of merge Tibet with us. Tibet is not easy to live in, very high altitudes. Spend a week in Ladakh, you'll understand how it feels. Right? Most Indians can't handle that. But you see, if you want more land, more territory, you can certainly bring Pakistan, Bangladesh back, but that will come with its own gigantic problems. If you don't want those two nations, and neither Afghanistan, then I can only see Tibet. But that's on the other side of the Himalayas. So we'll have to build highways and all that, which will be huge engineering feats to cross the Himalayas and go into Tibet. So the ideal geography of Bharat is what? It's the Indian subcontinent, which it has always been. If you want more land, the only thing I can see is Tibet or maybe some parts of Central Asia, in which our people had settled for thousands of years. Right? No, nothing else I can think of. I would not be in favor of extending Bharatvarsh to Iran. That would be, well, not nice, right? Spade says, how did even after KGB officers in Indian political systems were able to acquire nuclear weapons, did the Russians know about it? They allowed it. What? Excuse me. How did even after KGB officers in our Indian political systems were we able to acquire nuclear weapons? Did the Russians know about it? Did they allow it? I have no idea. I'm not supposed to know these things. I am not a member of the Indian intelligence. I am not a member of the Indian government. I was not a member of the government in the past when all of these things happened. And these things are secrets. We're not supposed to know these things. But assuming, let's say that India was to some extent infiltrated by external intelligence agencies, maybe the KGB, maybe the CIA, both, let's say, hypothetically. It was well known that India has a civilian nuclear program, right? And the Americans, Canadians, whoever, they also cooperated with us and sold us some fissile material and whatnot in the 20th century. And it was well known that we had this 3-stage nuclear program, and we wanted to be a major nuclear power producer. And everyone knows that if you have nuclear reactor capability, then it's just a matter of time before you can develop your own nuclear weapons, especially when you have breeder reactors and which produce plutonium and so on. So it was not a big secret that India was technologically advanced. We had good scientists, good engineers. And so maybe it was known that India had the capability. And India first tested a nuclear weapon in what? 1974, right? In Pokhran. So when we did that, were the Americans and Russians aware of this? Maybe they were, maybe they weren't. I can't say. But were they in a position to not allow us to do it? I don't think so. Even if they knew it, how could they have prevented us from doing something in our own territory? Not really. They could not. And I'm sure the Russians would have seen this as not a negative development from their perspective, right? Because it would then give the Russians a different kind of counterbalance to China. Because India and Russia have always been on good terms. And China is a nuclear weapons power. It became so in the 1950s, 60s, yeah. And there was a problem for Russia. So if China is now counterbalanced by a different nuclear power, which is India, it's not a bad thing. But the sad thing is that after our nuclear test in 1974, we went to sleep for 24 years. We said it was a peaceful nuclear demonstration. It was a technology demonstration. We have no desire to have nuclear weapons. And we went to sleep. It's only in 1998 that we tested the second round, that we conducted the second round of nuclear weapons tests. And then we actually developed weapons, right? So India has always been this nation with zero ambition. Always a nation that is, punches way below its weight. It's only now that we are punching at our weight. That's why the whole world, especially the major powers, are not pleased with us. So, yeah. Pranay Kumar says, what is the ideal population of Bharat based on area? 300 million. 300 million, 30 crores. No, 3 crores. What is 1 crore? 30 crores, right? Okay, I'll just say I get confused when I transpose between crores and billions and millions. I'll say 300 million is the ideal population of Bharat based on area. I would see around the time of independence, dominion status, 1947, undivided Bharat had a population of about 330 million. And that undivided Bharat included what is currently not Afghanistan, but Pakistan and Bangladesh. So all of that was 330 million people. Today, without Pakistan and Bangladesh, we have 1.4 billion, which is a disaster. So ideally, it should be about 300 million. But we should not be in a hurry to bring it down. This population, rebalancing should happen over the next couple of centuries, not the next 50 years. It will be a disaster. Vishal Roar says, government said any terror attack is the act of war. So war, no. There's going to be thresholds, red lines, like I said. This is most likely not going to be something that leads to war, unless I'm completely mistaken. I could be mistaken, of course. But see, the terrorists who have been apprehended and caught were all Indian citizens. I'm sure they have connections with Pakistan and sympathies with Pakistan and so on and so on. But how do we justify war to the world when the terrorists are Indian citizens? That's the problem with terrorism, you see. That's why terrorism is such a powerful tool for Pakistan and whoever is financing Pakistan. That's the thing. I don't see this going to war at this point in time. Maybe I'm wrong, and that's okay. Tanmay Deshpande says, with the far right surging in Germany, is Europe heading back towards ideological extremism? Extremism around the world is on the rise, so is racism. See, there's something called Newton's third law, right? For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So when the European dictatorship, which is headed in Brussels, which is located in Brussels, which is a dictatorship, okay? The so-called EU government, nobody voted for it. They are not democratically elected, but they control what happens. They decide what happens in Europe. They decide the policies. They decide what kind of people are made to migrate to Europe and so on. So right now, the past few years, what's happening is that the various EU nations have been forced to absorb refugees, a certain number of refugees every year, who are typically military age males with very few women or children, and they are typically from only certain countries, generally countries that have Islamic populations, right? So when this sort of invasion is being engineered into your country, there's gonna be a pushback. There's gonna be a reaction to that, right? So Europe will obviously become radicalized as a consequence. When the leaders of Europe are doing this to the people of Europe, when they are re-engineering the demographics of Europe and destroying what Europe is, then there's gonna be the resurgence of the far right, far right, whatever you want to call it. I don't consider it to be far right. It's just a natural defense mechanism. Today, everything that is not left is far right. Right? That's how the Western media portrays things. And we Indians, we read that and we say, oh, far right extremism. What far right? They're fighting for their survival. To some extent, I feel sympathetic to them. We also face the same problem, but we don't have a far right? We have 100 million potentially Bangladeshis in this country, and we are sitting and we are employing them as maids and puncture wallas and vegetable sellers, and we have no problem. Indians have a death wish. The Europeans probably don't have a death wish. Right? So that's what's happening. And obviously, when you have this situation, there's going to be racism. What do you expect? What do you expect? It's Indians who are like sheep. We have 100 million Bangladeshis possibly in India. And Indians are like, oh, everything is fine. Everything is fine. We will employ them as our housemaids. We'll employ them. We'll buy vegetables from them. We will, I don't know what else. Indians are like sheep. Ritvik says, someone said last time, recently Meghalaya is the center of tourism. I'm very happy about it as far as the Far East is getting popular. But the most famous place is Dauki, which is at the Bangla border. Analyze on map and how can it be a problem? I remember there was a question about Dauki a couple of episodes ago, 2-3 episodes ago. Let's see. Dauki, it's right on the border with Bangladesh, isn't it? Dauki, Meghalaya. Dauki, Meghalaya. Zoom in. So it's a river, and it's a very pretty river, very transparent looking river apparently. And yeah, this is the one. And if we zoom out, we will find that it's on the border between India and Bangladesh. Right, it's right on the border. And you will have tourists from both countries converging in this area, apparently. That's what I've seen. And you have this boating and whatnot, right? So some part of this comes under Bangladesh, and some part of it comes within India. And there is no demarcation of the border, apparently. Oh, well, we can see street view over here. Nice. Nice. Very pretty. Dauki tourist spot. Dauki village. Meghalaya. Okay, so that's the kind of situation we have here. Let's zoom out. Okay. So what would you like me to analyze on the border? It's an open border, clearly. There is no fencing as far as I can see. And that is generally the situation along large parts of the India-Bangladesh border, which is something that is extremely concerning. because we know the situation with Bangladesh. All the Bangladeshis, they want to move into India, right? They all want to move into India. They all seek to live in India and enjoy the benefits of living in India, but they have no allegiance to India as a nation, as a civilization, as a culture. Huge problem. Huge problem. And that's why the government needs to do something about this. So I noted with great satisfaction and pleasure that on the 15th of August, the Prime Minister of India, Mr. Modi, he announced that there's going to be a high-powered demographic action force or something, which will do something about the illegal immigration into India. Well, I hope that some action is taken on that soon. Yeah. Abhinav Kulkarni says, sovereignty questioned in open, Japanese sovereignty questioned in open parliament. Is that so? I am not aware of what has happened in the Japanese parliament, but let me explain what the situation is with Japan. Japan is not a sovereign nation. This is something I have been saying for, I don't know, years now, right? I've been saying this, explaining this for years. Japan is not a sovereign nation. Japan has a parliament. Japan has a government. Japan has elections. Japan has prime ministers who come and go. Japan has laws. Japan has a constitution. So from outside, it looks like a proper functioning democratic nation. You have elections. Obviously, it's a free country, right? But look behind the scenes, behind the curtains, and you will see that Japan hosts more than 130 American military bases on its territory. 130 American bases, military bases, permanent military bases. More than 50,000 American troops. The Bank of Japan is controlled by the Americans. The Japanese government can't take a single decision on foreign policy or military policy without the express approval of the American generals who run the country. So if you look behind the scenes, Japan is under permanent US military occupation. It is not a sovereign nation. Madame Prime Minister of Japan, she may say whatever she says. It is her duty to say that Japan is a sovereign nation. But if you look at the definition of sovereignty, you will see that Japan does not fulfill any of the criteria required for a nation to be democratic. What about the Japanese constitution? The Japanese constitution was written by the Americans, and the Japanese government has not been allowed to change a single word of the constitution since 1945. Do you call that a sovereign nation? 6P70 Delta says, when asked about Russian hackers 2016 US elections, Putin said, how do they know they are Russians? They could be Tatars, Jews. Was he being sarcastic? I have absolutely no idea. I've not seen this. I am not aware of what of this particular statement by President Putin. So he said that, how do you know they are Russians? They could be Tatars, Jews. Was he being sarcastic? I have no idea. So I've not seen this comment, so I won't be able to answer. If I have seen it, I may be able to. Well, shall we Google that? Putin 2016 election. Let's see. Let's quickly take a look if I can find it. Putin 2016 hackers, Tatars, Jews. Okay, let's see. Maybe Jews, maybe minorities. Okay, it's something from 2018 you're talking about. You're talking about something he said in 2018. Okay, that is something he said, what, 7 years ago? Maybe they're not even Russians. Maybe Ukrainians, Tatars, Jews, just with Russian citizenship. I don't know. Was he being sarcastic? Probably. If he is talking to Megyn Kelly, if he's talking to the Americans, he's going to be very sarcastic at times. So maybe he was being sarcastic. Okay. Sanchit Srivastav says, your views on the Mitrokhin Archives, are they credible? The Mitrokhin Archives. I think there is some credibility to it. Yeah. I haven't studied them in detail, but I'm aware of Shri Mitrokhin and some of the things that he said, how subversion is done and so on, which is something the Americans do better than the Russians, by the way. And I'm sure that he spoke about something about India being compromised in certain ways. I'm sure some or much of it may be true, but the details I don't recall right now, so I can't say. But I think there is certainly significant credibility to the Mitrokhin Archives. Godliness says the US is still the only superpower around the globe. Trump is dancing like an emperor, and still he used the term G2 while meeting Xi. It seems the G2 word was used just to make Xi happy, but nothing in real. See, like I have said so many times over the hundreds of episodes in which I've spoken, there is a vast difference between words and actions. Indians love words. India is a performative society. India is a society of slogans, which is why we pay so much attention and so much importance. We place so much importance on words. Are inhone ye keh diya. Ah, taliyan. Oh, he said something fantastic. Let's celebrate. Who the hell cares about words? Actions is what matters. So Trump met Xi, and before he meets Xi, he says that G2 is about to convene. And after he meets Xi, he says that God bless the United States and China and so on. Words, words, words. What have been the actions? Nothing. It's business as usual, right? You think Xi will be happy because Trump used the word G2, the term G2? Xi doesn't care. Xi is not Indian, right? She doesn't. The Chinese don't start dancing when somebody says a couple of nice things about them. The Chinese don't care. The Chinese do Chanakya Niti 1,000,000 times better than Indians. And that is a crying shame for all of us. We focus on slogans, on words, on flattery. The Chinese don't care. They look at your actions. So if you think that Trump made Xi happy by using the term G2, what can I say? It made no difference to Xi. No difference whatsoever. And overall, the Chinese kind of came out on top in that summit meeting. Last says, what do you think was the main reason for the Allies winning World War II? Cracking of Enigma, Operation Barbarossa, internal sabotage, or still classified or all? Well, different factors. The cracking of the Enigma code, it was a significant breakthrough, and it allowed the Allies to start hunting down all of those Untersea boots, the U2, the U-boats, right? That was a huge setback for the Germans. That's one element, small element. Operation Barbarossa was a massive element in Germany's, the beginning of the decline of Germany, because instead of finishing off Britain, they decided to go after Stalin. Stupidity. They should have finished off Britain first, right? Then the history of the world would have been different. But they decide to go after Stalin, and instead of going for Moscow, they go down south to the Caucasus. They decide to go do that first. At the end of the day, because there is oil in the Caucasus, right? So at the end of the day, they dilly-dallied here, there, everywhere, and they were punished first of all by the greatest Russian general, which is General Winter, and then the Russians just steamrolled the Germans over time. Internal sabotage, not really. Still classified, I'm not sure. Can't say. How do I know? So I would say mainly it is Barbarossa. That stupid mistake of going for Russia before finishing off the UK. Ansh says, how does the US's $38 trillion debt play a part in its geopolitical position? I see all this debt and insane money printing cause incredible corrosion internally and fall in external position. Look, this debt, the Americans are not worried about the debt. The debt is in US dollars, right? So all they have to do is to print more dollars. Obviously, it will cause inflation, it will destabilize the economy, but they can do that if required. And the debt machinery is so opaque and so convoluted that it is very hard to wrap your head around it. And it's very hard to explain how the machinery of debt works. Nations buy debt. Nations do not ever want to repay debt today. Look at the debt to GDP ratio of Japan. Look at the debt to GDP ratio of various EU nations. None of them is ever going to pay off the debt. To whom do they owe the debt? To whom does the US owe this debt, first of all? Do they owe the debt to China, to India, to Japan, to the EU, to somebody else? To some extent, they do owe some debt to these countries, but a lot of the debt they owe to themselves. How does that work? Yeah, it's super complicated. I can't explain to you in 5 minutes. So much of this debt is owed to itself. It's all hand waving and creating dollars out of nothing, that sort of thing. So X bank will owe to Y bank and that sort of thing. That super complicated, and the whole system is designed in such a way that it is meant not to be understood by anyone except for the people who run the thing. So if the US wants to get rid of the debt, what will they do? Maybe they will dump it all into cryptocurrency and then deflate the cryptocurrency, just blow it out of existence or something like that. So the Americans have created the system and they know how to use the system. And it's not like anyone's going to be in a position to force them to pay money, right? James Jamal. Oh, James is now Jamal. James Jamal. Even Bengalis agree Kolkata was better under the British. Well, you see, James Jamal, the problem with Kolkata today is that there are more Bangladeshis apparently than Indians in Kolkata. And during the British Raj, you did not have Bangladeshis in Kolkata. So I would agree with those who may claim that Kolkata was better under the British, because you did not have allegedly several scores of Bangladeshis squatting on the streets of Kolkata. Yeah. UMX says, why are Indians so obsessed with Western names? Look at building names in Mumbai. Lodha Bellissimo. What the hell is this building in India? Is it in India or Italy? Have you seen the names of schools in India or colleges? Saint Xavier's, Saint Paul, Saint Anthony, Saint Federico, Saint Barbarossa, Saint God knows what else. Put a saint somewhere, and then the school becomes substantially better, apparently. When it comes to names of buildings, when it comes to names of projects, when it comes to names of cars, when it comes to whatever, names of people, names of children, Indians are obsessed with Western, everything Western. Indians have this gigantic inferiority complex. Indians have this gigantic self-loathing. They are ashamed of their culture. They are super deracinated. They think that if you want to be cool, you have to sound Western. And what is the reason for this? What has caused this? It's the education system. It is your teachers and professors. It's your media. It's your entertainment industry. It's your so-called leaders. All these people. It's the fact that you are made to study in English if you want to have any chance of getting a good job. It's the fact that if you want to get a good job, you have to answer the interview questions in English. If you speak in your native language, out you go. India is completely colonized. So why are we surprised that this is the situation today? In 50 years, India may not even be a Hindu nation anymore. Of course, today India is not a Hindu nation. We are a secular nation. Good for us all. Good for us all. We are digging our own graves. UMX says, Iranians now think that their empire reached India. It did, didn't it? There was this creep called Nader Shah, who did invade India, who did conquer parts of India, and who supervised a one-day massacre of the people of Delhi. He stood atop some mosque, which still exists apparently in Delhi, and from there he gave the order for a general massacre of the Indians, the citizens of Delhi, men, women, children. Nader Shah. But the point is, Nader Shah was not Persian. He was a Turk. Nader Shah was not Persian. He was a Turk who ruled Persia. Just he was the same for the Persians as Aurangzeb was to us, but different, because the Persians were Muslims, so Nader Shah did not oppress the Persians, but Aurangzeb oppressed us because we were Hindus. But ethnically, Nader Shah was not Persian; he was a Turk. But today, Iranians are like, yes, we conquered India, that sort of thing. Some Persians are like that. Not all. Not all. Persia lost its sovereignty about 1400 or so years ago. It's never regained its sovereignty, right? So if Nadir Shah conquered India, it was not Persia that conquered India. It was the Turks who conquered some part of India. Yeah, briefly. Right. Arav Shah says, brainwashed student says, what would Mr. Gandhi do in this geopolitical situation? AC says, what would Mahakali do? Okay, you seem to have been paying attention to me. I think that's something I would have said on Twitter or something, right? So people say, there are certain politicians who will say on Twitter that we have various options in geopolitics. We can follow what Mr. Gandhi would do, or we can follow who some other person would do, and so on, right? Or what Gautam Buddha would do. My point is, what would Goddess Kali do? Why do we only have to look at these people who prioritize non-violence and passivity? And if you want to talk about what would Gautam Buddha do, I'm sure the samurai asked themselves what would Gautam Buddha do, because the samurai were apparently Buddhists, right? Even though they had a lot of Hinduism also in them. The samurai were Buddhist warriors who were vegetarians. They, apart from eating fish, they did not eat any other meat. Were the samurai passive believers in non-violence? No. They were some of the deadliest warriors ever. So the point is, we have to look at things in the proper perspective. Don't ask yourself what Mr. Gandhi would do. Ask yourself what your gods and goddesses would do. Each Indian god and goddess carries a weapon. Each god, each goddess carries a weapon. Why do they carry weapons? Why? Are they for display? So yeah, it would be relevant to ask yourself, what would Ma Kali do? What would she do? Yeah. And what answer would Mr. Gandhi have to that? Mr. Gandhi said that Ma Kali is wrong. Would he dare say that? Ask yourselves that too, right? Right. Godliness says, from last 1 year, reform is winning all the elections in the UK. The right is banging on the streets and people are desperate for a change, even ready for a conflict, if necessary. Keir Starmer is struggling badly. Keir Starmer is a loser. The guy has zero leadership qualities. He has been appointed. He has been placed in that seat. The US, the UK parliament, the whole system is a rigged game now. The UK is the Western version of Japan. In Japan, every few months, there's a new prime minister. It's a revolving door kind of situation, right? Every few months, there's a new prime minister. A few months later, the prime minister is gone. A couple of years down the line, you don't even remember who was the prime minister 2 years ago. That's the situation in Japan. That's the situation in the UK also. So before Keir Starmer, who was there as the prime minister? Was it Rishi Sunak? Before Rishi Sunak, there was some lady, right? What was her name? I forget her name. Then you had Boris Johnson. You had David Cameron at some point in time. You had some guy called Brown. I don't know how many prime ministers have come and gone in the UK. What's the process by which they come and go? That also I'm not clear anymore. I don't care anymore. It doesn't matter anymore. The UK is not important. It's not relevant in global affairs. It's a third-rate world power. It's a vassal. It's a colony of the US. And yeah, I mean, what is the government of the UK doing about what's happening in the country? What is happening to the women folk and the girls of the country? What have the Pakistanis been doing to them for decades? And people like Keir Starmer have been covering it all up. Shameless people. And they come and lecture us about human rights and democracy. First, take care of your women. Take care of your daughters. Shameless people. A bunch of cowards and losers. And the same applies to the people of the UK as well. Why are you tolerating these so-called leaders who are covering up what's happening to your people, to your girls? Why don't you oust them, dethrone them through whatever means necessary? If you don't do that, you are cowards. Cowards. UMX says, the Brits are very obsessed with dividing and conquering. They even talk about this technique while teaching computer science courses in prestigious universities. The Brits are a nation of, they're has-beens. That time is gone, it'll never come back. In a few years, the UK is going to be the Islamic Republic of the United Kingdom. It's going to be Londonistan, and it will serve them right. They are going to pay for the sins that they have perpetrated on the entire world, that they have committed through through their various actions in the world, especially in the Indian subcontinent. They're going to pay for it. It is karmic justice. So they can talk about dividing and conquering and all that nonsense. They themselves are being divided and conquered right now. Serve them right. A. Rahul says, why secret societies make their members commit a taboo? How do members of such societies benefit by being a member? Could the Epstein case be such a taboo? Look, I am not a member of any secret society, so I can only speak about this in hypothetical terms. But look, if you are a secret society, okay, and you want the society to remain a secret, you don't want the world to know about it, then you have to ensure that none of the members of the society dares to reveal the existence of the society to the world or reveal any of the secrets. So how do you ensure it? You can take an oath. You can make every member sign a document and give a promise and all that, but these are just words, empty words, right? It's like you have to put your faith in the person, and everything depends on the person keeping the trust. But people are known to gossip. So how do you ensure that their lips remain sealed? You ensure their lips remain sealed by having something called leverage on those people. So you have them commit something that is not to be done, something very nasty, and then you ensure that evidence of that is recorded. That way, everybody has done it. Everybody has has that leverage on everybody else. So everybody is then bound by that common thing, that common taboo, or whatever you want to call it, right? So that's how it's done. Now, how do members of such societies benefit by being a member? So the first question I took today was that why don't we all start a deep state? My point was, what will we benefit by starting a so-called deep state? First of all, we will be starting it in public. A deep state is supposed to be hidden. It's supposed to be a secret society. Secondly, by starting this group of people, what will we achieve? Chai pe charcha? No, it has to have some objectives. And for the objectives to be achieved, you need to have means to achieve the objectives. It means money and power. Without money and power, it's just going to be a gossip group, right? So how do members of such societies benefit by being a member? By being in proximity and connection and allegiance with other very powerful and wealthy people. That way you can get things done. So each member of the society depends on everybody else to get things done. And by cooperating, you can get way more done in a mutually beneficial way than by being isolated and not being in connection and with everybody else. That's how you benefit by being a member of such an alleged hypothetical secret society. Could the Epstein case be such a taboo? It could be such a taboo, potentially, hypothetically. It could. Abhirup Sarkar is a new member. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Very nice of you. And let us all welcome Abhirup to the channel. Thank you very much. 6P70 Delta says, your opinion on the recent Ukraine corruption scandal? I have no idea. Ukraine is corrupt. Is there a scandal? Is that a big surprise? I am not aware of whatever new thing has happened, but it's super corrupt. I mean, Zelensky is a corrupt person. Zelensky, his entire role is to ruin his country for the benefit of the US and NATO. Isn't that corruption? How does the Ukraine war benefit Ukraine? Ukraine is being ruined. That is the biggest example of corruption you can have. So, if there's a corruption scandal, there's no surprise. Ritvik says, you were absolutely correct saying Indians are naive. People are focused on doctors doing attack, but it has nothing to do with profession, it's religion. All right, so my policy is that I don't discuss religious matters and I don't discuss Indian politics. So I'm going to say, okay, sir. Right? All right. And thank you. AKS Bagga says, your opinion on Sheikh Hasina said there were no foreign coup. I am not sure what she has said. I heard that she recently gave an interview to some Indian media organization. I don't know which one, but I haven't read it. I haven't seen it or read it. I have not seen the video if it exists, and I've not read the transcript of the interview if that has been put out. I'm sure something has been put out. I am not aware, but it's okay. I don't need to know her opinion. Doesn't matter. I don't care what she says, she doesn't say. What happened was a coup. It was orchestrated by the US. And I had predicted that coup 9 months before it happened. The video is on the channel. I made that video 9 months before the coup happened. So it's okay, whatever she says or doesn't say. But it was a US induced coup. No question about that. Dheeraj says, each and every Hindu life is invaluable. They can do 10 attacks in which only 5 people die with a collective death toll of 50, and we shouldn't go to war. Spinelessness is emboldening them. Each and every life, Hindu life, yeah, okay, is invaluable. No question about that. But do you understand how people rule countries? How do people rule countries? Do they look at each individual tragedy? Does the Prime Minister of India look at each individual tragedy? Or does he see India as a nation of 1.4 billion people and then draw red lines based on numbers? I am not advocating we do it this way or that way. I am only prognosticating how things are done. You see, when you are running a country of 1.4 billion people, you cannot deal with these situations emotionally. I think it was the infamous Mr. Stalin who said that one death is a tragedy, a million deaths is a statistic. I know it was Stalin who was a very nasty person who said that, but that's kind of the approach that rulers and leaders have in ruling a country. So I would say that, we should go to war even if one person dies. I would agree with you. But I will agree with you sitting here. But if I was in that position, maybe I would see things differently. We have to be a little mature and a little less emotional, sir, about these things. Each death is a tragedy. And each death is intolerable, I agree. But when you're ruling a country, you have to put your emotions aside. And sometimes you have to tolerate, you have to have tolerance. See, when people go to war, when the Americans did Operation Desert Storm, yeah, how many soldiers did they lose? Several thousand? Did they start crying and weeping about that? How many aircraft did the US lose in Operation Desert Storm? More than 50. Allegedly, apparently, it's possible we may have potentially, perhaps, lost a few aircraft, allegedly in Operation Sindur. And Indians start crying, oh my God, we lost X number of aircraft. Who the hell cares? You need to have some tolerance for these things. Otherwise, you will never succeed as a country. That is my point. But I agree with you that even a single death is intolerable. Each life is valuable. But when you're ruling a country, it will be a different length through which you see these things. That's all I'm saying. I don't disagree with you in what you say. Sangam Kumar says, your analysis on China, Japan, recent feud in Taiwan. So the Japanese Prime Minister, Miss I forget her name, Sanae Takaichi, she recently said that if the Chinese make a move on Taiwan, it could invite a military response from Japan or something like that. She said something similar to along those lines. She said, and the Chinese have gone ballistic about that, and they have dragged out all the old history of Japan and said that Japan has been a very bad nation during Second World War, and they did all kinds of atrocities, and Japan should stay away from this wrong behavior and learn how to behave, and China will not tolerate this, and we will take care of our national security and that sort of thing. So it's a war of words. Now, why has the Japanese Prime Minister said this? Because Japan is a US vassal, and they will say whatever the US tells them to say. Now, in 2023, Henry Kissinger had said that within 5 years, Japan will be a nuclear weapons power. So we are in 25. That's 2 years ago, right? So 3 years to go. So the way things are going, based on the statements coming out of Japan at the US, at the behest of the US, it looks like Japan could become a nuclear weapons power in the next 3 or so years. So maybe Kissinger will turn out to be right. Yeah, so as China's clout and power, hard power grows, the Americans will take specific actions to contain China. And Japan is a very important component of that policy. So we are seeing steps in that direction, right? Varun says, word Harken Cross. It's not Harken Cross. I'll tell you what it is. Okay, give me a second. It is Hakenkreuz. 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 How shall I? Here we have it. Hakenkreuz. That is the word that we are talking about. Hakenkreuz. Now, where was that? Right. So the word is Hakenkreuz. It means hooked cross. Aryan stolen from narrative building. Okay, that's a historical question. That's not quite a geopolitical question. But yes, as I have spoken about multiple times, the German word for the symbol is Hakenkreuz. It's not the swastika. And the swastika is an Aryan symbol, which means it is an Indian symbol. And it's also something that's been used across the world, even in Africa and whatever else in the Americas. And it's always been a symbol of auspiciousness. And the Nazis, they stole it from us. And today, the Europeans in the West insist on using the term swastika so that we can't use it as a symbol of as a Hindu symbol, right? So it's clearly, nasty behavior. So it's our civilizational symbol that the Nazis stole and misappropriated and used for very nasty purposes. Ritvik says the US has so many vassals. Tell the vassals of China and Russia. Kazakhstan, Belarus, Iran are the vassals of Russia. Please enlighten me. Okay. The US has lots of vassals. We don't need to list those. How many vassals does Russia have? Russia. One is Belarus. Sure. Right? Belarus, the Russians have even placed nuclear warheads on Belarus territory. So Belarus is a Russian vassal. Sure thing. What other vassals do they have? I would say various Central Asian nations, to some extent or the other, are kind of potentially semi-vassals of Russia. Of course, some of these nations have also been dallying with American vassalhood. So if you want to make it clear-cut, I would say Belarus definitely is. Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, to some extent are. I mean, they still cannot do things that the Russians will not agree to. So Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, etc., they are definitely within the Russian sphere of influence, and they will find it very hard to do things that cross Russian red lines. So to that extent, if you want to call that vassalhood, you could. The Russians don't have permanent troops in any of these countries, as far as I know. I could be mistaken. If the Russians have permanent military installations and troops, then you have vassalhood right away. Iran. Well, Iran is not a Russian vassal. Iran is you could say, a Russian ally. Is Iran completely sovereign? Well, it is very, very dependent on Russia and China for its economic survival. So I would say it is not economically sovereign. And because of all the sanctions the Americans have imposed on it, it is also not completely sovereign in various other ways. So Iran is not a vassal of Russia or China, but it is very strongly dependent on them, which gives them a tremendous amount of leverage, which kind of means vassalhood. So Iran is in a gray zone that way. So you could say, if you want clear-cut vassalhood, it is Belarus. Do we have anybody else in the Russian periphery? Mongolia, no. Yeah, I would say only Belarus, 100% sure. China, what about China? North Korea, nobody else. China only has North Korea. Once again, Iran is not exactly a vassal. It is dependent on China very, very strongly. So kind of gray area, but only North Korea is a proper vassal of China. Does India have a vassal? India doesn't have a vassal. Yeah, unless we don't talk about it. ICMBs says, what's your personal Indian geopolitical pet peeve? My personal Indian geopolitical pet peeve is that the Pakistanis are better at following Chanakya Niti than India. That's my personal Indian geopolitical pet peeve. The Pakistanis are better at following Chanakya Niti than India. Ritik Pawar says, why does Turkey block IF helicopter delivery? I'm not sure what's happened. Some people are alleging that the Turks have blocked it. Some Apache helicopters being delivered to India, the Turks have blocked it. Well, my question is, if the Americans want to deliver those helicopters to India, will the Turks dare to block that? Will the Turks dare to come in the way of the United States delivering something to some place? No. So maybe the Americans want to put the blame on the shoulders of Turkey and delay a delivery of helicopters to India. Okay, let's look at things in a broader perspective. Let's not do a simple surface level analysis. We can go a couple of layers deeper, because we have to understand Turkey is an American vassal. It's a member of NATO. The Americans have placed nuclear weapons on Turkish territory. The Americans have troops on Turkish territory. Turkey is a US vassal. Will a US vassal dare to disobey the master? There will be severe consequences, right? Have you seen the Americans getting angry with Turkey? Nothing. So who's really playing the mischief? Tell me now. 6P70 Delta says, what's your opinion on Ladla Engine Yojana? I have absolutely no idea what that is, sir. I'm very sorry. What is a Ladla Engine Yojana? I don't know. Is it something to do with Indian politics? I have no idea. Ritvik says, are we really territorially sovereign? We only show Gilgit-Baltistan and Aksai Chin on map, but we have no control over them. Indian travelers like me cannot even visit our own Skardu Valley and Gilgit. What we show on the map is what we claim to be our territory. Gilgit-Baltistan is currently under Pakistani occupation, and from a facts on the ground reality perspective, it is currently not our territory. Even though legally and morally it is our territory, we are not in a position to hold it right now. So we don't have sovereignty over that part of the subcontinent, neither over Aksai Chin, right? So what we show on the map is where we desire our sovereignty to be. But that's not the case, right? But wherever we have boots on the ground, we have complete sovereignty. So China shows Arunachal Pradesh in their territory on the map, right? From using the same argument as you. China shows Arunachal Pradesh in their maps as part of China, but they don't have control over Arunachal Pradesh. So does China really have territorial sovereignty? Please explain. It works both ways, right? So the point is, the maps show what you desire to be your sovereign territory. It doesn't show the actual realities, ground realities. But whatever the ground realities are, we have complete sovereignty there. That is the deal. So I would also want to go by road to Tashkent and Samarkand via Gandhar. I want to do that. I'm not in a position to do that. I would like to drive. I would like to drive all the way to Tashkent and Samarkand via Gandhar, stopping in Kabul. I'd like to spend 3-4 days in Kabul. Yeah, I would like to do that, but I can't. So we all face that situation. So India needs to become more powerful and regain access to the territories that should be ours, and regain access to the parts of the world that we have always had access to via friendly nations such as Gandhar, like Afghanistan, right? Prathar Dana says, Jewish influencer started racism against Indians over H1B, but whites have turned against them as well as Israel. Can it impact Israel-US relations? A Jewish influencer started racism against Indians over H1B, and whites have turned against them as well as Israel. Okay, I am not aware of any of this situation. Which Jewish influencer started racism against Indians? I am not aware of this at all. So since I'm not aware of it, I can't really comment. But let's say hypothetically there is a situation like this that I am not aware of. So some Jewish influencer apparently has started racism against Indians on H1B, and whites have turned against them. Against whom? Against us? Or against the Jewish influencer? Against Israel? Hmm. Yeah, I'm not really sure what the situation is. Whites have turned against them. Which them? You are mentioning one Jewish influencer, right? It is not Jewish influencers, not plural, it is singular. So who have the whites turned against? Okay, it's not very clear what you're saying. I'm really sorry, but I'm not able to exactly get what you're saying. Ritik Pawar says, what leverage has India lost after exiting Tajikistan base? Did we even operate that base? Which one was it? Was it Aini? Was it Farkhor? So we apparently in the 2000s had these two air bases, right? Aini and Farkhor. And that now news has come out that apparently we have exited from one of these, Tajikistan. Aini or Farkhor. So if you have an airbase there, then you can attack Pakistan from the northern side, from the Tajikistan area. So you can attack Pakistan at the same time simultaneously from two sides. It gives you an advantage over Pakistan. But if you exit Tajikistan, so it kind of, you lose that advantage in case you had it. I am not sure if we even had that airbase in a fully operational manner. Did we have Sukhois over there? If we had Sukhois there, how did we take the Sukhois there? Because you can't overfly Pakistan with Sukhois. They'll be frightened, right? They won't allow it. So if we had Sukhois there, how did we get them there? Did we fly the Sukhois over Iran and into Central Asia or Tajikistan? I'm not sure what the situation was. So I don't think it's a big deal, especially with the Afghanistan situation. Afghanistan and India are allies, right? Taliban and India, and Taliban and Pakistan have a huge territorial dispute. So let's see how things develop over there. There is another airbase, a bigger one in Afghanistan. Ankita ji says, about GPS spoofing. Question about GPS spoofing. YouTube is dismissing my question. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. YouTube, what can I say about YouTube? YouTube is my best friend, isn't it? What? 949,000. That is the number. That is the number now for me. 949,000. There is somebody in YouTube who is not a fan of me. Okay? There is some person, some individual, some fantastic gentleman or lady who works in YouTube who is not a big fan of me. I'm not sure if that person is in YouTube USA or YouTube India. But that person has hard-coded something into the YouTube parameters saying that my channel will never cross 949,000. Okay, it's okay. And apparently it is doing some nasty stuff with Ankita ji also and dismissing her question. Anyhow, so let's GPS spoofing. So recently we've had this news, right, that's come out on social media that there's been some GPS spoofing issues over the airspace in Delhi, also potentially Mumbai. So when you do GPS spoofing, it means that when you are an aircraft who wants to land in, let's say, an airport, it means that you will not get precise GPS information in your aircraft. See, as a pilot, you depend on GPS coordinates, right? You depend on GPS, the satellites, to know exactly what your location is, what your airspeed is, what your altitude is, and so much more. You have probably not altitude because you have altimeters and all that, but a lot of parameters come from the GPS satellites. And you also want to know exactly where the runway is, and maybe you want to use the autopilot using GPS to land automatically, perhaps potentially. So you need GPS if you are a commercial airline pilot. And if there is a problem getting the GPS signal, or if you're getting wrong signals, then it's a very dangerous situation, right? So that essentially is kind of what GPS spoofing is. And I'm not sure what is the origin of these issues. Is Pakistan playing some games and jamming GPS signals over the airspace of certain major airports in India? Or is the Indian government potentially doing that to prevent a terror attack or a Pakistani missile attack over these airports? Or is the US government, messing up the GPS signals to Indian airports? I'm not sure what the situation is, but it's concerning. And what is the solution to this? The solution to this is for India to develop a spinal column and to have our own proper alternative to the GPS satellites. We have something called Navik. Is the Navik system still operational? I'm not sure. Let me take a look at that. Navik, right? NAVIC. We had some 7 satellites, very, very low ambition thing. IRNSS with Navik. How many satellites do we even have? It covers India and a region extending 1500 kilometers. Look, the Chinese alternative to GPS is global. The Russian alternative, GLONASS, to GPS is global. GPS is global, but Indian Navik IRNSS is just subcontinent based. Why does India lack ambition? So how many satellites do we have? Some system consists of a constellation of 8 satellites. 2 additional satellites on ground as standby. What's the situation right now? What is the system? Clock failure happened. Indian atomic clock. Israel Space Agency. Navik chip. Time frame. Is it operational right now? Is it properly operational? If it is properly operational, why are we not using it? Why aren't airports using it? I'm not sure what the deal is. Okay, I will not do the research right now, but clearly we need to develop a spine. And if GPS doesn't work, we should be able to seamlessly switch to our own GPS alternative, right? That's what needs to happen. For that, you have to put the capabilities in place. We have to launch lots of satellites and make it a global system and have redundancy built into the system, which means if 1 satellite, 2 satellites go down, the system still works, or we can rapidly launch more satellites. Do we have those capabilities? Do we have the ambition? Do we even figure in the space race at this point in time? I don't know what's going on in India, really. So there are some aspects that are pretty disappointing as of now. Prathardana says, not Sindur 2, but we need Chattogram chicken neck. I would not disagree with you. Yeah. So if you look at the map, look, any nation that is self-respecting will shape its neighborhood to its advantage. If the borders aren't good, then it will change the borders. So we have Chattogram. Chattogram is this place, right? So there is a chicken neck here, which is about 30-35 kilometers wide, which connects the Chattogram area to the rest of Bangladesh. So that is kind of Bangladesh's chicken neck. And obviously, India can anytime take that region and take Chattogram back into India. Chattogram should never actually have been part of Bangladesh in the first place. So that is something we can do whenever it is required. We can also take Rangpur, etc., and widen the chicken neck over here significantly if and when required in the future. So that is something that is not a big deal. It's not like we will face a lot of resistance from Bangladesh. The Indian army has tremendous military superiority, and that can be done if required in the future. Minimalist Maverick says 2024 was a whole year of aliens and UFO spottings, and the 2020 year was a year of viruses. Why is everything stone cold as though it didn't even happen the first time? What is stone cold right now? Yeah, 2020 was the year of the virus, and it looked like the whole of the 2020s will be the decade of the virus. And thankfully, it's not the case thus far. So COVID is now a bad dream, kind of. It's a bad memory, but we have moved on from COVID, and nobody will tolerate any more lockdowns. People are sick and tired of lockdowns. And 2024 was a year of aliens and UFO spottings. Yes, the whole of the US was inundated with UFO sightings and so much more. And apparently, these were all US government drones. Because after Trump came to power, his press secretary, she said that these were US government drones that were spotted over New Jersey and whatnot. So those drones were filmed by various people transforming from drones into orbs. So that is pretty advanced technology, clearly. So that was a deal in 2024. Now we don't see these reports of UFOs over American skies that much anymore. So why is everything stone cold now? I'm I can't speculate. I don't know. I hope it stays stone cold. I don't want new aliens to come to to our planet, or I don't want any aliens to come to the planet. We would like to have a peaceful existence, isolated from the rest of the universe, isolated from all the other alien species that may or may not exist out there. And we don't want any new virus outbreaks. Good gods, we don't want that. That COVID thing was enough. Yeah, so I hope it stays that way. Right. Brawny Batman says, where did this Kailash Satyarthi vanish? Never saw him rescue children or do any service. He got a Nobel Prize. What did the deep state plan with him? Well, I'm sure he is. There are plans for him, I'm sure. See, Mohammed Yunus, that fellow, he won the Nobel Prize several years ago. And he kind of vanished too, right? Until he has resurfaced now. And he is the chief advisor or whatever the hell he is for the military dictatorship of Bangladesh. Similarly, this Kailash Satyarthi individual, I have no idea who he was, where he came from. I have no idea what work he has allegedly done or not done, but they gave him the Nobel Prize. So maybe they are keeping him in store, in reserve for future action. Maybe they want to do something similar in India, like what happened in Bangladesh. Regime change. And if that happens, maybe they will make him the chief advisor. Right? If they hypothetically succeed in such a maneuver. So, they cultivate this asset, they give them various prizes and designations, and then they put them in cold storage to be used and activated later. So maybe the deep state has plans for him for the future. Vidhi Maniyar says, HWCN, IN, balkanize. How can India balkanize Pakistan? Isn't it powerful? UM Vasal. How can India balkanize Pakistan? Isn't it more powerful than India? Pakistan is not more powerful than India, but it has the backing of the world's most powerful nation. So how can India balkanize Pakistan? Well, you have to hit at if you want to balkanize a nation, you decapitate the leadership. So the Pakistani command and control structure is like a pyramid, right? At the very top, you have the Pakistani chief marshal or whatever the hell, Asim Munir, right? Asim Munir is currently the dictator of Pakistan. And below him, we have the army command and control structure. Below them, they have the civilian government, the police, and all that. That's the command and control structure. If you want to balkanize Pakistan, you take out the top leadership and make the entire pyramid unsustainable. So it's not enough to take out simply Asim Munir. You have to take out the entire top military structure of Pakistan, and then let the chaos unfold. That's what you do. And when that happens, when there is a lack of decision making for some time, that's when you make your moves militarily and take control of various places, and that way the pack of cards can fall. So that's kind of how you do it. You can also do a coup if you have the resources for that, in which case you don't need a military operation. But when you have less money than the US, it's very hard to do that. Right. Abhaya Patil, no question, but all right. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. Okay. Ankita says, what's your opinion on recent GPS spoofing to misguide flights? New way of terrorism or warfare? Is there any preventive technique to deal with this situation? I think I took it, but I'll take it again. So it could be perhaps Pakistanis trying to, jam GPS signals over various major airports with the hope of maybe causing some mishap. That's one possibility. Second possibility is maybe the Indian government is doing something to prevent a Pakistani Pakistani attack, maybe missile attack, maybe some other kind of attack, and doing that while keeping the aircraft safe, possibly. And third is maybe the US government is messing up the GPS signals over major Indian airports with whatever objective they may have. So if it is being done from outside India, maybe from Pakistan, maybe the US, then it is a very nasty thing to do. It's kind of a terrorist kind of activity, right? It's warfare by other means. It's trying to cause a mishap, accident, air accident. That is very very, very bad. So, what is the preventive technique to deal with the situation? The preventive technique is for India to have a proper GPS alternative, our own constellation of satellites that give us the exact same service or a better service than GPS. That's the thing. So, we have the Navik system, but I'm not sure how operational it is. I'm not sure, and it is simply confined to the Indian subcontinent and slightly beyond it. The American GPS system is global. The Russian GLONASS system is global. The Chinese Baidu or whatever system they have, that's also global. But our IRNSS is subcontinent based. We have no ambition. We are a country that lacks ambition. The Chinese have been working on this for like 10, 15 years. At that time, they were not such a big economy, but they still had the ambition, right? So we need to have our own alternative to GPS. Same quality, if not better quality. That's what we need to have. I'm not sure what the situation is with the Navik system. I would say that if it was fully operational, then we could simply seamlessly transition from GPS to Navik in case there is spoofing. But clearly that's not happened. So it looks like we have no alternative right now to GPS. Maybe Navik is used only by the military. I'm not sure what the situation is. But something like Navik can be used for the military as well as for civilian purposes in different ways. That's what we should have, and that would be the preventive technique. The diplomatic lens says, do you think during BJP government occurrence of civil war is negligible, but in Congress it is inevitable since now Hindus are more aware of oppression? See, I do not discuss internal politics. I do not discuss religious matters. I discuss geopolitics. I stay away from these matters. So I will not take this question. Congress, BJP, all that stuff. I will not go into this. I apologize, but it's a policy. I don't discuss internal matters on this channel. I discuss geopolitics, history, and science. Moksha says government's plan to expand medical visas for Westerners will raise healthcare costs and hurt Indians. Please oppose this policy and tweet about it. Okay, I will have to look into the policy first of all, right? What is the policy? Is there a new policy for medical visas? If there's a policy for medical visas, in a way, it could be good for the Indian economy. It doesn't have to raise costs for all Indians, right? Maybe you can have a certain set of costs for. See, in India we have tourism, right? To some extent, we have a tourism sector in this country. We have the potential to be a tourism superpower, but we are a tourism also ran. So in Indian tourism, in the Indian tourism sector, if you want to go to some historical site, to some museum or whatever, then there are two sets of fees. If you go to a museum and if you are an Indian citizen, you may have to pay, let's say, $20, 20 rupees or 50 rupees, let's say. But if you don't have an Indian passport, if you're a foreigner, you have to pay 500 rupees. Double standards. So we can do the same kind of double standards for these medical visas. When Westerners come to India, charge higher costs, but don't charge higher costs for Indians. So it depends on how the policy is implemented. I suppose the government can't tell medical practitioners and institutions what kind of fees they should charge. So it's going to have multiple considerations. So I'll have to look into this, and if it's something that falls within my domain, then I could tweet about that. Shubham Vavare says, how to make this country get its shit together? Sad. Look, we have many issues, right? Look, that's not a geopolitical question, but how to get the country get its shit together? We need better leadership. I'm not saying we have bad leadership right now. We have potentially the best leadership we've ever had since 1947. But still, there are so many issues that need to be looked into. One thing we need to do is get rid of all the Bangladeshis, Rohingyas, Pakistanis, cookies, get them out of the country, all foreigners out. That's number one. Number two, whatever alleged corruption may or may not exist, please deal with that. That itself will make the country get its shit together. Neil Shah says, all I hear everywhere is all problems India has and how we don't see any significant progress being made towards solving them. But on the other hand, I also hear if we just survive the next 20 years, we would be hard to mess with. So every country has problems, right? Even the US has tremendous problems. One problem in the US, every citizen in the US has access to drugs. Drugs are available on every street corner. Every street corner has drug dealers. Why? Isn't that a gigantic problem for the US? Right? And then all the other stuff so every country has problems. Now there are people in India who only want to focus on the problems. There is significant progress in India. India is unrecognizable compared to 2014. Okay? The problems we had in 2014, a lot of those problems no longer exist. But now we are more ambitious because of the progress that's happened, the growth that's happened since 2014. And that's why we want the other problems to go away. So Indians are now more impatient, more ambitious. And that's why you kind of see a lot of problems. And today we have social media. We have free speech today in 2025. Did we have actual free speech in 2014? Could Indians speak openly the way they speak today in 2014? Ask yourself these things. So that's why you apparently see more problems, but the problems were always there. And many of the problems have been solved. A lot of the poverty has been eradicated in the past 10, 11 years. A lot of things have happened. And so that is one thing. And secondly, it's true. If India gets just keeps its head down, avoids any major military confrontation, and keeps growing its economy at even 5, 6, 7% per year for the next 20 years, India is going to be a totally different beast in 20 years. India is going to be really hard to mess with if we can just keep on the right track for the next 20 years. No question about it. Despite all the problems India has, India will still be hard to mess with if we stay on the right track for 20 years. So there is no question about it. That is completely correct. Pratardana says, looks like Pokrovsk is done, and is it significant? I am not right now keeping track of the minute developments in the Ukraine war. What's happened in Pokrovsk? Let's see. Is it significant? Look, let me see. What has happened in Pokrovsk? Whoops, what is that? Why is Navik there? Pokrovsk. What happened? Bakhmut is an old story. Pokrovsk. Breakout near Pokrovsk. 30 killed. Russia hits Kiev with overnight attack. Fighting intensifies in Pokrovsk. Did Russian mill bloggers claim the village had been completely captured, which was confirmed on 3rd September. Okay, we are in what? Today is 16th of November. So the Russians captured a village. Is it significant? Look, it will be significant when they capture Kiev. All these little half a kilometer here, half a kilometer there, I don't even keep track of this anymore. It doesn't matter. So, yeah, it doesn't really. From my perspective, it's not significant. There are all these little military observers who keep on looking at every half kilometer of what's happening this half kilometer, what is happening there. They will keep on. It will keep giving them content and something to talk about. From my perspective, from grand strategy perspective, it makes no difference. Yeah, my perspective is very clear. Russia is going to prevail in this conflict. Whenever it does prevail, whether it will happen in the next 6 weeks or the next 6 years, that remains to be seen. It will depend on what Mr. Putin wants to do and how he wants to do things. But one village being captured, I am not concerned. AKS Baga says Maduro offering 300 billion barrels of oil to the US. Okay, the thing is, I am not a news surfer. I'm not complaining. Okay, I'm just saying. I'm just explaining the way I analyze things. I am not a news surfer. I don't keep track of what's happening every 1 hour or every 1 day. I may know what happened last week. If you try and keep track of exactly what's happening at the latest moment, then you will be overwhelmed with information and you will not be able to process it properly. The less you watch the news, the better informed you are. That is my philosophy. The less you consume, the more informed you are. So what I do is I look at what happened. What are the major events that happened in the last week? Then I'll do that 1 week from now. I will not keep track of what's happening every minute. So I'm not aware of this offer that Maduro has made. If he has made it, good. Maduro must be desperate because the US is putting together an invasion force in the Caribbean, in the region near around Venezuela. A couple of aircraft carriers and maybe an invasion force on the islands in the region. So it looks like the US is preparing for a proper invasion of Venezuela. So maybe Maduro is desperate and he knows that Vladimir Putin from all far away in Russia can't help him. So maybe he's trying to find some way out of the situation that he is facing. In case he has made this offer, I am not aware of it. Annamalai S says, you just said this. In 50 years, India mostly won't even be a Hindu or secular nation. My question is, why did you say that or think that? How many Indians practice Hinduism today? First of all, what's the percentage of non-Hindus in India today? According to the 2011 outdated census, what? About 80% are Hindus? That is 2011. We don't even have a recent census. There is industrial scale conversion activities happening in India, right? Industrial scale mass conversions happening in India every day. Thousands of Indians are converted to other religions every day. How many are converted to Hinduism? Almost nobody, right? How many churches are being built in India? New churches. We can see tons of them cropping up everywhere. How many new temples are being built? Nothing. How many Hindus who are still Hindus actually practice Hinduism? How many are proud of being Hindus? Very few today, especially in cities. If you look at the names that people give to their children, do you see Hindu names? Do you see the Indian government doing anything to support Hinduism? Yeah. So that's why I say this. Dravidian says, is FRTR truly a US vassal and TR also bought S-400? Are France and Turkey really American vassals and Turkey also bought S-400? France is a member of the EU. France is a member of NATO. And if you understand what sovereignty is and how it works, you will see that both are vassals of the US. But France is the one member of the EU and NATO that has a quasi-independent foreign policy and a completely independent nuclear deterrent. But it still is a US vassal because it is not territorially sovereign. It is not economically sovereign. It doesn't have its own currency. Its borders are open and so much more. So it's not a sovereign nation. Turkey, it's a member of NATO. It has American troops on its soil. It has American nuclear weapons on its soil. It's not a sovereign nation. If it's a member of NATO, there are times during which parts of its military come under foreign command. Do you call that sovereignty? Yeah, it bought the S-400. It got some kind of preferential treatment from the US, but in response, it was denied the F-35, which was okay with Turkey. Turkey also is a vassal. Naganand the Shenoy is a new member. Thank you very much, Naganandji. Really appreciate that. And Devil X537 is also a new member. Thank you very much, Devil XG. I really appreciate you as well. Thank you very much, both of you. Spade says, I have composed Chavda Chalisa. Bless us. He's very funny, yes. All right. 6P70 Delta says, which is more likely to happen in your opinion? Democracy in Russia or dictatorship in India? Whose expiry date will come earlier, Ukraine or Pakistan? Well. Democracy in Russia or dictatorship in India? Which is more likely to happen? Dictatorship in India, I don't see it happening. Do I? Democracy in Russia. I think democracy in Russia is more likely than dictatorship in India. Why? Because we don't know what happens after Mr. Putin leaves power. See, Mr. Putin is in his 70s. Let's say he has a decade more in power, okay? But eventually he's going to have to step down one way or the other. So when he steps down, the succession is the make or break point for the continuity of Russia. If the person who comes to power after Mr. Putin is capable, just like Mr. Putin, things continue and dictatorship continues. If you want to call what currently exists as dictatorship in Russia. But if the person is a weak person, then you will have the introduction of US style democracy in Russia. I think that is more likely to happen in Russia compared to dictatorship being introduced in India. Because India is a nation that worships Samvidhan and what? Parliament. So it's less likely to happen in India. Whose expiry date will come earlier, Ukraine or Pakistan? Probably Ukraine. I hope I'm completely wrong about that, but probably Ukraine. Siddharth Bilad says, Good evening. Good evening to you, sir. Could you enlighten us on our nuclear capabilities, given that we have only carried out a single nuclear test and claims that it was subcritical? We have carried out two sets of nuclear tests. One was 1974, the second was 1998. And there have been some claims by some individuals that one of the nuclear devices fizzled. So what's a fizzle? See, a fizzle means not all of the fissile material was consumed in that nuclear explosion. That's what a fizzle means, which means that the shaping or whatever, the geometry was not perfect. So that's why you conduct multiple tests. The Americans, when they conducted various tests, there were some tests that fizzled and some tests that had a way more output than what was expected. Maybe they were expecting 10 megatons, but it gave you 17 megatons. Woo, too much. So you have to fine tune the parameters, the geometry, the lensing action and all that within the nuclear device. You have an initial explosion that is a chemical explosion that pushes the various nuclear fissile material components together, and then if it's a thermonuclear device, then the initial fission reaction has to ignite completely. It should consume all of the fissile material, and it should then create an implosion which ignites a secondary fusion reaction, and all the fusion material, beryllium, deuterium, whatever it is, should ignite completely, and that gives you the massive thermonuclear explosion. So you need a specific geometry. You need all the components to be shaped in specific ways, and they have to come together in specific ways and all that. So it's pretty complex. It's kind of a marriage between engineering and art. Producing, designing nuclear weapons. And that's why it's possible that when you test a nuclear weapon the first time, it may not work properly. Maybe all of the nuclear material was not consumed in the reaction and it fizzled. So instead of giving you a 50 kiloton output, maybe it gave you a 20 kiloton output, that sort of thing. That's kind of, or maybe 10 kilotons or whatever. So that's a fizzle. Now, some people have claimed that maybe the Indian thermonuclear device fizzled. So a thermonuclear device is a 3-stage reaction. The first initial chemical explosion, which with chemical explosives, then a second fission explosion, which gives rise to an implosion situation, which gives rise to the fusion reaction and explosion. So that is more likely to fizzle than a standard fission device. So what is my opinion about this? I have no idea. I wasn't present there. I have not seen the data, and I don't know what happened. My point is, the simplest way forward is to do a few more tests. That's it. In case there was a fizzle, obviously then you would come to know, because you know what the output is, and then you can tweak the design a little bit and then test a few more times to ensure that it functions properly. But the problem is you can't test because there is a global moratorium on testing. So that's why you have to do subcritical tests, which is the tests only with the chemical explosive without using actual fissile material, or you can do computer simulations or whatever. But that is not the ideal way to do things. The ideal way is to test a few times in real life. So that's all I can say. I don't know if there was a fizzle of any kind, if there was any subcritical event. Can't say. AKS Bagga says, thoughts on 7,000 Russian deaths in the past week? I have no thoughts about that. Who has made this claim? The West, right? The West has been claiming what? That Putin was dying. The West has been claiming since 2022 that Russia has been losing. They are losing Bakhmut. They are losing everything. They have lost 3 million lives. Ukraine is winning. Putin has cancer. Putin has this. They have been making all kinds of claims over and over again. All those claims have turned out to be lies, and still Indians believe this. I don't believe any of this nonsense. I don't believe Western propaganda. I don't even believe Russian propaganda. I look at the lines on the map. Where is the Russian advance right now? That's all I care about. That's the only hard facts I have. Everything else is propaganda. So I don't care. I have no thoughts about this. UMX says, current Indians obsessed with actual third-rate Bollywood content, which is completely horrible and shows false history of India. I don't watch Bollywood. I gave up on Bollywood a long time ago. I used to like movies from the 1900s. Before, I would say before the mid 1970s. Movies before that, those were good. The music was good, the songs were good, the stories were pretty simple, pretty genuine, wholesome. After that, all kinds of ghastly stuff started being introduced into Bollywood, and there have been a few good movies here and there, but overall, I simply have no interest left in Bollywood movies anymore. I am a huge movie fan. Okay, I love movies. You give me the opportunity, I'll watch 2 movies a week on the big screen. I'll pay good money to do that if the movies are good. I can't remember the last time I went to watch a movie because even the Hollywood movies are garbage now. So sad. But yes, Indians, they're obsessed with all this Bollywood masala movies and all this OTT platform, what TV series or whatever it is. I can't stand any of that. I'm sure there are some hidden gems there that I must be missing, but I simply don't watch anymore. Okay, AKS Baga says, thoughts on US bomber in Bangalore. B1, was it? I have seen a few things. I travel on and off to various cities. I have seen interesting things. Maybe Bangalore, maybe Delhi. Yeah. I'm not sure why it was here or why I don't know if it is still there or if it is gone, if it is left. It's a B1B, right? B1 or whatever it was, B1B bomber. I'm not sure why it was here. Are they trying to sell a few of those to us? I would say we should not buy American military hardware. We should not. Because those things come with kill switches and backdoors and whatnot, and that vassalizes us if we buy those things. I would say we should not buy it. So maybe the Americans are trying to, sell the bomber to us. Or maybe they've sent a few generals to talk to us for some reason. I have no idea. It's all complete wild speculation at this point in time. But yes, I did notice that. I did notice it. But I don't know what it's for. Ritvik says, Arunachal Pradesh is my favorite state and I visited it as a tourist. I suggest you to visit Tawang, the best place. I saw you standing near Aksai Chin. You saw me there. I was on the LAC with Aksai Chin. I've been there a couple of times at least, multiple times. Yeah, but did you see me there or did you see a video of me there? Because I must have taken videos there or photographs. If you did see me with your own eyes, you could have come and said hi. Anyway, yeah, so I haven't been to Arunachal Pradesh thus far. I may know some people there. I would love to visit Tawang, for sure. Yeah, so thank you very much for the suggestion, for the recommendation, and I shall make it a point to visit Tawang, hopefully soon. Paritosh Jani says, do we really have legs on Kandahar Air Base? How? I don't know. There's all kinds of speculation in social media. हम कंदहार लेने वाले हैं, हमारे जनरल साहब पहुंच गए कंदहार. We have what Indian transport aircraft has landed in Kandahar. I have no idea how much of this is true, how much of this is not. The government of India has said no such thing. There are all these YouTube channels that whose entire game is speculation and hyperbolic claims to get views. I am not that sort of person. I'm going to be very realistic. I have no idea what's happening in Kandahar. Okay, Kandahar Air Base. It is a very major airbase. It's probably the biggest airbase in the subcontinent. And the Americans want it. But the Taliban doesn't want the US to have it. But the Taliban is also not crazy, right? If they offer it to India, the Americans will get really, really upset. So I'm not sure what the situation is. Would I want India to have legs, boots on the ground in Kandahar? I would be very pleased if that happens. I would be very pleased if India gets to operate that airbase to safeguard Afghanistan as well as deal with Pakistan. Yeah, that'll be great from my opinion, from my perspective. But is that in the process of happening? I don't know. I have no evidence. I have no data. So can't say. 6P70 Delta says, why are Indians going gaga over Tajikistan airbase? Don't they understand that our fighter fleet is dwindling and transport fleet is aging? We can't sustain. I have no idea. There are stories that India is no longer operating an airbase in Tajikistan, whether it is Aini or Farkhor, I'm not sure which. And I would say it's no big deal. Look, in the 21st century, fighter planes don't even matter that much anymore. Do you understand why? Everything is today a game of missiles. Why would you put a fighter plane and a highly trained pilot in the line of fire when you can do everything you want to do with long range missiles or medium range missiles? Extraordinarily precise missiles that we have. We have missiles that are so precise that we can fly them through a window in some part of Pakistan, a specific window we can tell them to fly through. So why do we need fighter planes to do that work? We can use fighter planes to do a different role, to play a different role after the enemy has been sanitized and their air defenses have been suppressed. So yeah, our fighter fleet is dwindling. We need more fighter planes, no question. And right now, as a stopgap measure, we are forced to rely on missiles more, which may not be a bad thing, but it means that we need to have significant supplies of missiles, stockpiles of missiles. So that's the situation. We certainly need to do something about our military capabilities. We are good in the area of missiles, but fighter planes, transport aircraft, maybe strategic bombers, we don't have any of those. There's a lot that we need to do. And right now, the situation is that Pakistan almost has parity with us when it comes to fighter planes. I mean, we are a nation with almost $5 trillion GDP. Pakistan is nothing compared to us, but they almost have parity with us. Shameful that we have allowed ourselves to be in this situation. Yeah, well, what can I say? Pratharadana says YouTube subs and views numbers are 100% fake. Very possible. Very possible. You can game that if you are behind the scenes, not as a YouTuber, but as an admin. I'm sure. Yeah. Devil X537 says YouTube might not be your fan, but I'm a super fan. Thank you so much. Also, please do give us some hope for the future of India, as most of the problems we are facing seem impossible to pass, and all we hear is critique. Look, I'll tell you what, like I've said before, I've said this many times. We have problems like every nation has problems. Maybe some of the problems are bad and pretty strong, pretty big. But let me tell you this. If we continue on the right path for 20 years, if we keep growing our economy just 5, 6, 7% a year, let's say 6% for 20 years, we're going to be a completely different beast in 20 years. Nobody's going to be able to mess with us. Let's use that word, mess with us. I had a different word in mind. Okay. The next 20 years are going to be a tough climb ahead. But that's the fun in life. Who wants to have an easy life? You want to have adventure. You want to have big challenges. So we have to all work together in that. In whichever way we can contribute. Next 20 years, if we stay on the right path, nobody will be able to mess with us, despite whatever problems we may be facing. That is the truth. So there will be people who will try to discourage you, this, that, etc. I'll not comment about those things. But the truth is that we are just 20 years away from completely rising above the little problems that drag us down. In 20 years, Pakistan won't even matter. And China will see us very differently. So will the US, if we stay on track. So that is the deal. I am a very optimistic person, and this is not blind optimism. This is just a factual assessment of how things stand today. That's what we need to do. So thank you very much, sir, for being a super fan. I really appreciate that. And all of you. Thank you. Excuse me. Excuse me. Pratham Soni says, watching you since 2019, one session raising your standards. Maybe we should have that. Yeah, maybe we can have that. Maybe I can do one session, Ask Abhijit, in which we discuss personal development, raising your standards, all that. Maybe I can do that. Thank you for the recommendation. Thank you very much. Dheeraj63 says, aliens will unite humanity. We need aliens. Maybe we need aliens. But the question is, if let's say tomorrow we face a genuine alien threat, sure, we will have to unite, but we will need leadership. We can't unite under 53 different leaders, right? We will need one leader. The question is, who's going to be the leader? The answer is the most powerful country will be the leader. Who's the most powerful country? It's the US. So we're going to have to go under US leadership. Kind of like a deal with the devil, right? Okay. Devil X537 says, also, sir, please set up some other ways to donate to you where you get more money than sharing it with these American companies. Okay. Yeah, I could do that. I could do this actually. Yeah, I no longer do this these days, but I could simply put up a QR code. I used to have a QR code somewhere. Where is that? Give me a second. Give me a second. Okay, here is a QR code. I have not been doing this for a while, right? So this way there will be no sharing with an American company. There we have it. All right. Yeah. Okay. Next time I'll keep this QR code up. I have been putting up the Ask Abhijit logo over there. So thank you for reminding me of this. Yeah. So anybody who wants to support the channel, please feel free to do that. But even if you don't, I'm perfectly happy. So thank you, sir. Devil X. I appreciate you very much. Thank you. Spade says, I agree with Devil X537 J Chawda. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Ajinkya Pawar says, any comment on Delhi blast, India's next move? I took multiple questions about that. How do I see this? It's obviously an act of terrorism. It's an act of terrorism by Indian citizens, doctors, well-educated people, which kind of tells you that education makes no difference. Education makes no difference. It doesn't prevent people from being terrorists, from becoming terrorists. Something else makes them terrorists, whatever it may be. So it was highly educated, professional doctors, Indian citizens who are involved in this, and they had some connections with Kashmir Valley-based terrorists, and there may or may not be some kind of Pakistani connection. The problem is that these are Indian citizens who have done this. So if we make a move on Pakistan, the world will accuse India of being a warmonger. And that is the conundrum we are facing. You see? That's the conundrum we are facing. India's next move, India will have to crack down on internal potential terrorists. India will have to be very vigilant in uncovering all these terrorist networks, which may or may not exist. My appeal to the government of India is, please deport the Bangladeshis, Rohingyas, Pakistanis, Cookies, whoever may be there on Indian territory. In 2014, the government of India had said in parliament that there are 50 million Bangladeshis in India in 2014. By now, the number may possibly have doubled. 100 million. What are we doing? You want less terrorism? Get rid of these people. India's next move right now, I don't see a war with Pakistan at this point in time. That's what I can say. I may be wrong, and maybe I hope I'm wrong. But I don't see that happening right now. Devil X537 says, hope you get lots of publicity and get to 10 million subs one day. Well, thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate your support and your contribution. Thank you so much. 6P70 Delta says, if the US ever collapses, will it be more violent than USSR's collapse, considering the polarization, hatred, and amount of guns in civilian hands? Considering the amount of guns in civilian hands, and if you look at the nature of the society, where there is, it seems to be a high trust society, but it's also a very tribal, territorial society. King of the castle kind of behavior. You trespass into my property, I have the right to shoot you. That sort of, attitude people have. So if there is a collapse in the US someday in the future, it's going to be pretty violent. It's going to be like one of those zombie movies or something. It's going to be like that. I hope it doesn't happen like that. Okay. I hold no ill will towards the people who live there, but yeah, it's kind of a volcano waiting to erupt. The number of guns you have in the US, more guns than citizens, my goodness. Yeah. Rudra says, 1951, India's share 14%, 18%, 361 million, 1.5 billion, 2.5 billion, 8.2 billion natural. I'm sorry. 1951, India's global share 14% to 18% to 361 million. 1.5 billion, 2.5 billion, 8.2 billion natural growth. You're talking about GDP? Are you talking about population? Obviously, it will be GDP because we don't have 2.5 billion people. I'm not exactly sure what you're saying, but you're saying something nice and optimistic. So I appreciate that, sir. I appreciate that. Aryan Raj says, can you explain India's linguistic history, how language families work, and whether LLMs can aid the study of ancient languages like Sanskrit? You can ask this question in a history episode, sir. I'm discussing geopolitics today. And this is a pretty complex question you've asked. I can't answer that in the next 2-3 minutes. To explain in brief, India's linguistic history goes back at least 10,000 years. Language families, how they work, well, that I can't explain right now. LLMs, can they aid the study of ancient languages like Sanskrit? They certainly can. Yeah. Okay. Pradeep Kumar Roy says, about SIR in West Bengal, I have no idea. That is an internal matter of India. I discuss geopolitics, so I can't say. I've heard that there is something which is gonna happen. I have not looked into it, so I won't be able to comment about that. And anyway, I don't look into these internal developments, and I don't discuss them anyway. Right. S. Nagacharan says, how will Trump crypto interests shape geopolitics? So Trump is investing in Pakistan's cryptocurrency sector, which did not exist until Trump decided to invest in it. And Trump has actually said this, I think in the White House or wherever he said it, that maybe we will put all our debt into cryptocurrency and make it disappear that way. So I would say that you should stay away from cryptocurrency. Maybe it is something that may give you profits in the short term, but long term it's going to be a disaster. It is simply a geopolitical tool to get rid of the debt, to deflate the debt out of existence. And nations like India should be very careful about the cryptocurrency sector. We should not put major resources into that. Divnur Singh says, why did Trump not end up taking Greenland and Canada? Well, Trump is all about hype, right? Trump is all about, he has cultivated this image of unpredictability. He makes a statement a minute, and 90% of the statements he makes, he doesn't mean them. He's trying to throw people off track. He's trying to keep people off balance. And he's perfectly okay with people regarding him as a liar, because he does lie all the time. So it was all about creating hype and maybe making a move somewhere else. So it doesn't look like he's going to take Greenland and Canada. But he looked like he was serious about Greenland, at least, wasn't he? Because he sent his son to Greenland, and he proposed buying the entire territory from Denmark. So maybe that may still be on the cards, and it may still happen perhaps in the future, maybe before he demits office. But Canada probably is something that that's more of a tongue-in-cheek thing, calling the Prime Minister of Canada the governor of the great state of Canada. So about some things he is definitely not serious. Maybe he still may be serious about Greenland. Ivan says, please throw some light on Mewar and its contribution to India. Plus, what kind of geopolitics was at that time for a nation like Mewar? You are very smart. You've thrown the word geopolitics in there into a historical question. Look, I am not an expert in Mewar. I can't say. Can't say because I haven't studied the history of Mewar. Definitely a lot of great people came from the region, from the overall Rajasthan region, Mewar, Marwar, and so on, all that. But yeah, I won't be able to answer the question because I haven't studied the history of Mewar in depth. And you won't have geopolitics emerging from Mewar because it was a subset of the subcontinent, right? Right. Nikhil Bansali says, if not democracy, which system do you think works? Specifically from the perspective of sustaining high quality leadership. Democracy seems to be failing us. Look, all you have to do to answer this question is look back at history. You don't have to look back at world history. Look back at the history of your own culture, of your own civilization. Look back at the history of India. Look back at the history of India the past 2,500 years. Ask yourself, when were the times in the past 2,500 years where India was doing great? I'll tell you. The Mauryan Empire, that period of time. The Kushan Empire, fantastic. India was a superpower during the Kushan period. Then the Gupta period. Major power, India, right? We took Bahalik and so much more. Central Asia, parts of Central Asia. So Gupta period, Gupta Empire, powerful, brilliant, tremendous prosperity and wealth. Then we have the Chola period. That's again an imperial period. Imperial period. Then you have the Maratha period in which we reconquer India and re-establish Hindvi Swarajya. So these are the times when India did brilliantly. We also had the Satvahana period, which was an empire in the Deccan region, southern India. Brilliant time of tremendous prosperity. So all of these periods of time, you had empires, which are dictatorships. That's your what your own history tells you, and that is the answer. But these were not Saddam Hussein type of dictatorships. These were dharmic dictatorships. Understand that. 6P70 Delta says allegedly in 2013-14, US citizens bought the same number of Kalashnikovs as the entire Russian law enforcement and military. Okay, I'm not aware of this statistic, but it's a very interesting thing if it's true. See, the Kalashnikov is the greatest product ever built, perhaps. You know, zero marketing was done for the Kalashnikov, for the AK-47. Zero marketing. But it became the most popular small arms weapon globally, in world history. Only through word of mouth. It works in every condition. It is so easy that even like 12-year-olds can use it. And actually that's happened in places like Africa and all, where you have child soldiers. Horrible, absolutely horrible. But 12-year-old kids can use the Kalashnikov. You can learn how to use it in like 3 minutes. That's how simple it is, but it is super reliable. And I mean, what can I say? It's so popular, right? It's incredibly popular because it's the best weapon ever built. And then you've had the automatic Kalashnikov 57, and then you have 104 or whatever, which are spin-offs of the original 47 version. But the 47 version is the gold standard. It's still the best weapon ever. So if this is the case, then I'm not surprised at all. VSVS 2400 says, I wanted to say that people confuse real GDP, 6.7%, 6 to 7% inflation adjusted with nominal GDP, which is 9 to 10%. India's 4 trillion GDP is nominal. You can't apply real growth to nominal GDP. At 9% nominal for 20 years, we hit 20 to 30 trillion. Real is for economists. All right, I will have to look into this. I am not an expert in economics. So once again, let me re-examine what you're saying. People confuse real GDP, which is 6 to 7%, inflation adjusted, with nominal GDP, which is 9 to 10%, which is not inflation adjusted. Okay. So India's 4 trillion GDP is nominal. It's not real. Okay. You can't apply real growth to nominal GDP. At 9% nominal for 20 years, we hit 20 to 25 to 30 trillion. Real is for economists. Okay, noted, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Interesting. We'll have to look into that in more detail. And that brings us to the end of the questions in the super chat. I think I have covered them all. All right, how much time has it? Okay, it's been 2 hours, 45 minutes, which is a long time. Okay, do we have any more super? Okay, there's one more super chat. Let me take that as well. The Rational Reporter says, what would India's political, economic, social future look like if we organized our society based on ancient Indian philosophy, Sanatan Jain Buddhist kind of Indian Renaissance, then on Western philosophy? What would India's political, economic, and social future look like? Well, India would be a more cohesive, more peaceful society for sure. India would be a better organized society. India would have probably zero corruption, better political stability, a better economy, more prosperity, more wealth. And yeah, that's how it would be. But it would take time to transition to that kind of society, because right now we are a very weird, mixed up, colonized society. So to transition to that thing would take maybe a few decades. But yeah, in the long term, it would be good, because that is the real nature of our society, and that's how it actually should be organized. So yeah, it would be good if that happens. Nikhil Bansali says, I think Indian kings and royalty were as responsible as British and Mughals for ruling us as long as they did. They were oppressive Gandhi family types, 2 lakh ruling 100 crores. I'll tell you something, Nikhil Bansali ji. Our experience with Indian kings and royalty is the princely states, right? The princely states. These princely states, they came into existence in the 19th century. The princely states that we are familiar with are the princely states that were allowed to continue to exist by the British after 1857. In 1857, you had Indian kings who fought the British. And unfortunately, they all lost eventually. And they were all wiped out. The entire families were wiped out. And then some distant relation would be discovered and placed as a puppet king. So after 1857, after we lost that war of independence, every single princely state king who was allowed to keep ruling nominally was a British vassal. Some of them were genuinely good people. They said that, instead of dying out, let us cooperate with the British, but serve our people in some way, in whatever way we can. Some of them were good. But many of them, they owed their title as king to the generosity of the British. So they served the British. Many of them. Many of these so-called princely states, these so-called kings, were collaborators with the British. They were collaborating with the foreign occupier of India. So that is our experience of these kings. But we have forgotten the kings who fought the British and died for us. We have fought all those kings who fought the Turks for 500 years and died. So you have to look at history from different lenses. If you look at history from a 50-year lens, you will see a certain picture. If you look at history from a 200-year lens, you will see a different picture. If you look at history from a 2,500-year lens, you will see a totally different picture. So let us have different perspectives. Let us have a broader horizon. Let us not be narrow-minded and see only a certain thing, part of history, and then base all our judgments based on what we have seen from that narrow part of history. That's what I would urge everybody to do. Please develop a broader set of horizons and don't come to these judgments based on the belief that you understand everything. I don't understand everything. I still try to learn every single day something new. So let's not be under the delusion that we understand the world. There is a lot that we don't know. Let's have an open mind and let us not be so self-loathing. Let us not have this inferiority complex that our people were all bad. All right? That's what I would request all of you to do. Okay, Sahil Singh says, bless me, sir, for my interview on the 27th. Well, all the best, Sahil. All the best. You have my, who am I to bless, but I wish you the best. You have my best wishes. Do well and achieve whatever you want to achieve. All the best. All right? 6P70 Delta said, I meant the number of guns in the hands of US citizens. I think that's exactly what I meant. There are more guns than citizens in the US. So yeah, if you look at the number of guns in the hands of US citizens, it's a terrifying number. And if the US descends into political instability, it could lead to something very disastrous. I hope it doesn't happen. All right, that brings me to the end of today's live stream. I have dealt with all the questions from the super chat, and we have crossed 2 hours 49 minutes. We are almost at 2 hours 50 minutes. So let us now end this live stream. Thank you very much, everybody, for the questions. I really appreciate that. I think we covered a lot of different topics, and I look forward to seeing you all next week in next week's live streams. Until then, please keep learning. Keep an open mind. Don't believe you understand everything. I don't understand everything. There is a lot I don't understand. So please keep learning. Keep asking questions and keep raising your standards. Take care, everyone. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.